Howdy, and welcome to another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I'm your host, Daniel Dolphin.
A little house cleaning to start. We have had and will continue to have the mock sponsors for each episode. I know they're fan favorites. Now that we have hit our 100th episode, we have got some exciting news. The Adult Onset Horsemanship podcast has a real sponsor. As most of you know, I have and maintain facial hair. For Christmas this past year, my wife got me some mustache wax for my growing mustache. I have tried other products and they have left me wanting. Death Grip Mustache Wax has been head and shoulders above the others I've tried. I was so impressed and pleased that I reached out to them to see if they'd be interested in an arrangement, and they were. I have to say, just like their products, the company has been very easy to deal with and does what they say they're going to do. Plus, skulls. Am I right? So, if you're interested in high quality men's grooming products, I can recommend them wholeheartedly and even offer you a discount on their products. You can find links in the show notes and the discount code written out, but if you'll go to their website and use discount code AOHPOD, all one word, you can save a nice chunk of change and still get a very high quality product that won't let your whiskers down. They even have combs, oils, and a coffee mug designed to keep your lip cover nice and dry. Treat yourself or the man in your life to competition-winning waxes that offer style and make eating and drinking a whole lot easier. Guaranteed to make your man 50% sexier. So check out Death Grip Mustache Waxes and men's grooming products.
Our guest today is Ivy Starnes of Ivy's Gait. Ivy is a gaited horse clinician who specializes in helping her clients get their horses gaiting better through relaxation. She has been training gaited horses for over 15 years, working with 90 to 100 different horses per year. She has learned with that experience that most horses respond the same way no matter what the breed, but she does train differently if the horse is trotty or pacey. No matter how they move, she works on head down, softness, and relaxation first. Ivy has experience in learning the art of natural dressage. She has worked with trick training, clicker training, and just basic horsemanship. She now combines trick training, natural dressage, classical dressage, endo tapping, and clicker training to work with horses. She combines all of these things to help strengthen and supple the horse and improve their movement and balance. Well, I am very pleased today to be talking with Ivy Starnes. She is from the gaited horse world, and I think we're going to have a pretty darn interesting conversation. I met you in person at the Midwest Horse Fair that just happened here, I guess, about 2 weeks ago now. And so thank you for being willing to come on, and I'm really looking forward to our chat, Ivy.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Well, very good. Well, as you may know, we start everybody off with the lightning round questions, and these are for points and prizes, so you want to be on your A game here, okay? All right. If you were a Jedi, what % chance is there that you would misuse the Force?
A 0% chance.
0%? Okay, cool. Morning or evening?
Evening.
All right. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
No.
What is your favorite pizza topping order?
Pepperoni and onion with hot honey.
Okay. I like that. Hot honey that's a gift to the world right there. That is some seriously good stuff. If you could have any superpower, which one would you choose?
I would choose flying. I would want to be able to fly.
Right. It's the only proper answer.
Yes.
And then you open up a tree trimming service and you beat all the competition out there because you don't need cranes or you just fly. That's the way to, yes. Clearly the right answer. Thank you for that.
Yes.
What question can't you seem to find the answer to?
Is this in relation to anything in life or just
Sure.
horses?
Yeah.
Oh,
However
man.
you want it.
You got me stumped on this one. Question I can't seem to find the answer for. Well, in the gated industry, why is it so important for some people to rely on the way we used to do things when it clearly harms horses?
Tradition is peer pressure from dead people. I love that saying.
Yeah.
Do you carry a knife?
Growing up, I used to all the time. But now that I don't live on a farm and I board my horses, I don't carry it as often as I used to.
Okay. If you could bring back any old word like dandy, gross, as in a quantity, curmudgeon, etc., what would it be?
Probably swell.
Swell? Okay. How are you doing? I'm doing swell.
Swell.
Do you know why Mozart killed all of his chickens?
I don't know.
He asked them to name the world's best composer, and they all said, Bach, 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 Bach. Got to get the dad jokes in there every once in a while. What would you have been professionally if not a horsewoman?
I have 3 answers to this. Probably a dog trainer, or if it was a more friendly environment for women, I would love to operate big equipment, like road equipment, bulldozers, that kind of thing. Or what I do now is also like an artist, like watercolor. So probably one of those 3 things.
Big equipment operator. I want to delve into that a little bit here later. I did not see that one coming.
I don't think most people wouldn't know.
How do you like your steak? And what cut of steak do you like? I have a lot of food questions here.
Food questions are good. I like medium rare, so I want it to be a little pink inside. And which cut of steak? I am not the biggest steak fan. So my favorite way that it's prepared is with a lot of butter and herbs on it.
Okay.
And because I want that flavor rather than the flavor of the meat. So in that case, I don't have a favorite cut.
Kind of like I think people that like lobster actually like butter, right? Because lobster itself is reasonably bland. They like butter is what they like.
And I don't love the flavor of steak, so I want lots of flavor on it.
So what do you like? Like, let's say it's Ivy's birthday and we're going to go out for what are we getting? Is this a pizza thing or bowl of cereal or
pizza or burgers is probably, it would be one of those. Yeah.
All right. Meat and bread. I like it.
And I'm gluten-free right now, so that...
Okay.
So that means not so many burgers unless you take the bun off.
Uh-huh. Or have you ever used like portobello mushrooms instead or that kind of stuff? Getting
but
creative?
that sounds really good. I haven't, but it sounds great.
Do you have any feelings on how tablets were replaced by scrolls and then scrolls were replaced by books and now we scroll through books on tablets?
That is, I have never heard the question posed that way. I think English language is very interesting.
Everything goes full circle eventually.
Yes.
What do you always have too much or not enough of?
Time.
Okay. So hurry up and wait.
Yeah, and I am definitely a person who likes days where I'm lazy and I'm not training horses and not working. And then there's times where there's a time crunch and then you don't have enough time. So, and I'm a procrastinator, so I feel like I have plenty of time and then all of a sudden I don't have it.
So what Ivy's telling us is she has ADHD. We got that. Okay. So let me ask you this. So you mentioned the rest days and stuff.
Yeah.
you seem to be, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't know you well, but you seem to be a fairly extroverted person, which is actually kind of odd in the clinician thing. Most of us are pretty strong introverts who are like drug out here against our will. So do you need like the rest day after the expo of I don't want to hear a human voice, or you're good to go,
No.
or what?
No, I'm usually good to go, except my brain is tired. Well, expos are easier than when I teach a clinic. I mean, if you've done, like clinics, a 3-day format where I ride like 8 horses and I'm teaching for 9 hours a day, 3 days in a row. I need a rest day for my brain because it was working so hard, but not a break from people. So like after the expo, I'm totally fine to be around people. I could do I was actually really sad when it ended because I would have been happy for it to go on a couple more days because I was like busy talking to people, and I love doing that. So I would have been fine if it kept going.
Yep. I would have to say that expo is so big that there were quite a few things we had flagged that we wanted to see or a person to talk, and we did not make it through everything. You're right. It could go 5 days. Really could.
Yeah.
What is the best horse movie?
The Man from Snowy River.
Ooh, I think you're the first person to say that one, and that's a really good one. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
I think my next choice would be Seabiscuit.
Okay.
That's a movie that's not necessarily about the horse, but it tells a really interesting story about the relationship that people have with each other, and I like that aspect of that movie.
Okay. Are you decisive or indecisive?
Usually very decisive. But if you were to ask my husband, he gets to see all of my indecisiveness.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. Cold showers or cold food forever, which would you pick? And I feel I need to clarify here. So the cold food can be cooked. It's just like been refrigerated. You can't just heat it up. So
I would definitely have to say cold food.
Okay. Yep. A bunch of my northern people have reached out and they're like, we survive on hot showers. That is not a fair question. So, but I don't know.
It's a question. It's fair. Like if you have to pick, you have to pick,
Yeah. How big should a horse be?
Oh, how big? That's very subjective. I think there's no right answer for that question.
So you don't have an ideal size, like you're fine with a 17 hand or a 14 hand or whatever.
Both.
There's not
and I've ridden horses, like smaller ponies that are like closer to the 13 hand, and I know that like if proportionally I'm big for them, but I don't feel like I'm on a little horse generally. And if I'm on a 17 hand horse, like I feel it when I get on them, but once I'm on, I don't feel this giant difference. So I'm super comfortable. If I were to pick the horse that I would look for, probably something close to 15 hands, but I think I'd be very happy with a horse anywhere from 14 to 17.
Mm-hmm. Good. Would you tell us something unexpected about you?
I really love playing volleyball, and I don't like trail riding. For most of my clients, that's a shock.
Yeah.
Because most of my clients are people who trail ride, but I actually find trail riding very boring. So.
Okay. That is interesting. I would not have expected that.
Yeah.
How long do you dunk a cookie in milk?
I don't. None of my family did that growing up, so it's not something that I like learned to do as a child, so I don't dunk it. And actually for a long time, I used to eat my cereal without any milk at all. And now I put milk in, but usually only like a couple of tablespoons of milk for a bowl of cereal, just enough to get it like a little wet, but not soggy at all.
Golly, okay.
My husband likes to make fun of me for that.
Yeah, I don't have enough saliva that you made my mouth dry just saying that out loud. So Do you have a favorite cookie?
Favorite cookie? Probably like a chocolate chip cookie would
Okay.
be one of my favorites.
That's a solid choice.
Yeah.
So what about this? Since we're on the cookie thing, what about like the oatmeal raisin? Are you disappointed? Do you see that and think it's chocolate chip and then realize it's oatmeal raisin and you
If
like
I
your
thought
balloon
it was
deflates or what?
if I thought it was chocolate chip, I would be sad. Oatmeal raisin is fine if it's soft enough.
There you go.
But
You don't want a crunchy oatmeal raisin. That's
no.
absolutely true.
And
Yep.
I know there are people that make them that way, and no thank you. I would just say no thank you.
Is there a skill or technique with a horse that you have seen in someone else and don't have, but wish you did?
Okay, what I thought of immediately was you in the half a session that I got to go to at the Midwest Horse Fair to listen to you talk about bits. You mentioned being able to feel a horse swallow, and if I feel it now, I don't notice it. So it's something I would definitely want to develop how to do that for sure.
It's mostly about being aware. Once you start looking for it, you will find it. Yeah. Yep.
Yes. So that, and there's people that are so good at so many things in the horse industry. I think, not that I want to do roping, but I think the skill to be able to throw a rope would be amazing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It seems like
very cool.
It seems like a skill you have to work really hard to learn, like most things, but it seems neat.
And I would likewise say I was really wanting to get to watch one of your presentations, and it just never worked out where I did. But the gaited horse thing I've probably started maybe 100 of them, but I don't know how to get them to gait. That has always been a mystical, because they just, they move their own kind of way, which is not what I'm used to. And so we'll get a lot deeper into that. But that just goes to show about like how big the Midwest Horse Fair is, that there's no way you're going to see everything that you want to see, because there's just so much going on. Yeah.
Yes.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how well can you back a trailer?
Bumper pull, I would say probably a 9. And a gooseneck or the fifth wheel, I've had very little opportunity to practice, so it would be a lot lower. I've done it like once or twice and been fine, but probably closer to like a 3 or a 4.
It's actually easier. So if you've already learned how to, yeah.
So if I were to do it a couple times, it would probably be up there, because I've been able to back up very small, short bumper pulls and get them exactly where I need. So
yeah. So, would you share with us a horse industry related pet peeve, or several? Open floor. So,
pet peeves. They're one of the things. I have so many. Okay. My biggest one, my 2 biggest ones, is in the gaited industry. I really, 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 really dislike when people use the term collection when what they really mean is tucking the nose. And that's all they mean. They mean none of the rest of what goes along with collection. And they're like, collect your horse up. People say that. Or they're like, I've been told I'm collecting my horse. But they don't mean that at all in any sense of the word collection. They just mean tucking the nose. Another pet peeve that goes along with that, and this is almost more prevalent, is people are constantly with the gaited horses talking about using a half halt. When I think most people, all they mean is like they just pulled on the reins. They're not doing a true half halt. They don't know what a half halt is. And they're saying it like, oh, I'll watch someone at a clinic or a lesson, and they'll be like, I was doing a little half halt. And I was like, no, you weren't. You weren't. Like, that was not you didn't do a half halt. Like, I didn't see, you might have pulled back, but you didn't do a half halt. Then there's other gaited clinicians out there that are like saying, oh, you can half halt, but I don't think we should use that term we're not defining it correctly and teaching people how to do it well. 1 second, I gotta manage this dog quickly.
Sure.
There we go. Okay. And in the horse... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for what it's worth, I don't think either of those are exclusive to the gaited world, particularly what you're talking about with the I call it false flexion, where they're talking about collection and all they mean is vertical flexion there. But yeah, so that's not nearly just gaited world stuff, I would say.
100%. But I see it a lot. I'm sure you see it it's probably in every industry. I mean, it exists even in dressage when people think tucking the nose means collection, and it doesn't. So those are two really big pet peeves that I have. Okay, I'll give you another one. And I think, because I know you have a wide variety of people listening, I mean, yourself included, if you're part of this. Stop making fun of gaited horses. Stop making fun of their riders. Stop making them cry because they're in your clinic and you don't like gaited horses. I am so sick of hearing someone say, I went to a trainer and because they don't like gaited horses, I got singled out and picked on. And we need to do better. I think trainers of every kind, Western, English, hunter jumper, if you have a client that has a gaited horse, it is your job to learn more, not pick on your client because they have a gaited horse. Gaited horses are not going away, and we need to adapt. There you go. Mini rant.
Okay. No, that's fine. I have had gaited horses. Like, the only thing I do is, like, the only difference I would say that I have, and I kind of pick on everyone equally. That's part of my love language. So it's how we're going to break. But so, like, if I'm going to say we're going to trot circles, except you're going, because your horse doesn't trot. So you're going to do whatever. You know.
That's fine.
That's about the only.
Like making fun of them, but people have said I've went to all kinds of clinics and then made to feel bad because their horse is different. Not just don't trot because your horse doesn't, but like actually picked on because the trainer doesn't understand gaited and just like is like that's a worthless horse or something like that. That bothers me.
Yep. I remember the first time I had a gaited guy in a clinic. He was riding a mare, and I can't remember what he competed in. He was an older guy in his 70s, but he had won the world in that event, like 13. Like, he was dominant. Wow. He was the 800-pound gorilla in that. And I started separating people out to do a trotting circles exercise, and he rode up to me and like felt like he needed to explain that my horse can't trot and all. And I'm like, no, you're good. You just go do you. Like, I'm not worried about, but he was almost apologetic about it. I guess I never have really picked up on the, if y'all feel like second class citizens or something like that, but that kind of makes that moment I'm like, you're the most advanced rider in this clinic by a long ways. Like, you don't need to feel bad or ask permission or anyway.
Yeah.
Well, there are some jerks in this business. I don't understand that. We're like a people business, and there are some people that like seem to go out of their way to be an asshole. You're like, how do you have any customers? Like, who puts up with that? But they do.
True.
So
it's true.
I don't know. Different strokes for different folks, I guess.
Yeah.
Feral or spoiled? So do you have a preference as to what you would prefer to work with if you had that choice?
Feral, it was feral or spoiled. Probably feral, but I don't mind working with a spoiled horse if it's not a dangerous behavior. So I would say, so I have owned a horse that was spoiled in the way that before he got to me, he had learned he could pull away and kick out at you. Like, run away and kick at you. To me, that was dangerous. That was not a fun horse to work with when a horse has learned that. But if it's like spoiled, like they're looking for treats and they're like in your space and you need to work on manners and like, I don't mind the patience that it takes to work with that if it's not a dangerous behavior.
So this has nothing to do with you, but the thought just occurred to me for regular listeners of the podcast. I would like for y'all to take notice of how often
the professionals that deal with lots of horses have equated spoiled to dangerous. Everybody thinks the feral horse is the dangerous one, and when you hear the professionals talk, without fail, all of them are concerned with the danger aspect of the spoiled horse. So just bear that in mind and do with that what you will.
That's a good point.
Crunchy or smooth peanut butter?
Crunchy.
All right. I knew I liked you, Ivy.
Yeah.
Smooth people. It's just like, what are you afraid of a little texture? I mean, what's wrong with you? Dogs or cats?
Dogs for sure, but I do like cats.
Okay. Do you have a dog breed that you have a preference for or a type?
I love German Shepherds.
Okay. So you don't mind the little dust bunnies all over the house and all of that stuff? Nope.
Nope.
I remember we had a German Shepherd. He was actually the most cowardly dog we've ever owned. Like, he was absolutely a coward, but was a good dog. And after he passed, April was cleaning up one day, and I find her crying in the living room, and she had just swept up what she assumed would be the last dust bunny from Ozzy. And yeah, we had a moment over that. So, but love the German Shepherds, but they are not all brave. This one was most cowardly dog I've ever owned by a ways. So, bay or sorrel?
Bay.
All right. Bay horse mafia in full effect.
But my first horse, it wasn't my first horse that I bought, but the horse he's 22 this year, his quarter horse. I've owned him his whole life since he was 6 months old. He's a chestnut. So I do like, but if I had to pick, bay.
Has been one of the surprising things to me. I figured that'd be a 50-50 split, and it is not anywhere near 50-50. It's like 90-10 people picking bay horses. Yep. Yeah. The other weird part of that is, like, in the industry, even though I've got this anecdotal evidence, it's not like bay horses bring more at a sale. You don't see any perceived change in value. Whereas, like, if you have a paint, there'll be these fads where black and white paints will bring 3 times as much for a little while, and you'll have roans, and there's this cycle of fads of color. But, like, the bay thing never shows up as a preference, even though it is such a strong literal preference in answers when I ask this. So I don't know. Do you have a favorite piece of tack or horse-related tool?
Favorite. I don't think I do. I am not. Well, okay. To answer the question, I really like the reins that I use. They're English reins, but the brand is Thin Line. And so it's got this sort of smooth rubber coating. Rubber isn't a good word for it, but it's like foam. And it's very, very comfortable to hold. And many people, when they try my reins, they're like, wow, that is super comfortable. And I would have to say that I really like that piece of equipment, just for me. And when people try it, and, of course, there's people that like the feel of rope reins or a macate or a lot of different things. And I just happen to really like the feel of these reins for what I do.
Okay, that's fair. I'm a pretty big advocate of how my reins feel too, so I totally understand that. What is the best smell in the barn?
Hay, probably.
Are you a alfalfa fan, or it doesn't really matter, grass hay, whatever?
It doesn't really matter if it's good hay. I mean, alfalfa does smell really good, but if it's like a good grass hay, that also smells really good.
Okay. On a scale of 31 to 37, how glad are you that people don't spontaneously express themselves through song and dance?
I think it would be cool if more people express themselves through song and dance.
You damn extroverts. Oh, God.
I don't know. I'm like a 32. Yeah, because it was how glad am I? I'd like 32 or 33 because I think I would be happy if more people did it.
As a world, I would be living in the mountains in a cave if that were true. Yeah. um, Thoughts or feelings? Do you
Both.
think of yourself more of a intuitive by the gut person or more cerebral, analytical, think it through kind of person?
More cerebral, more thinking. Um, but I think, yeah, definitely more thinking. But I think feeling is very, very valuable. And I think whichever we are, thinking or feeling, we need to work hard to be the other way as well, or empathize with the other side.
Do you have a favorite or least favorite barn chore?
I really don't like mucking stalls. It was not something I grew up doing, because I lived with my parents initially in Illinois, and the horses were just on pasture, so we never had stalls to pick out. And as an adult and having done it some, or living on my own, it is one of my probably least favorite chores would be mucking out stalls.
Okay. Ready to get on with it, huh? Do something productive. This is dead time. Kind of, yeah.
And I know some people say they love that, like, calm, quiet opportunity. And here's the extrovert in me being like, "Dad, no, thank you. Being by myself is not my favorite thing." It's actually one of my least favorite parts about going to the barn and training is that I am by myself. And hopefully this doesn't come up in a different question you have. But one of my dreams, or one of the things I would love to see, is to be at a barn that has other horse professionals there that aren't necessarily gaited trainers, but maybe you've got chiropractors and people that do body work and dressage and reining, and they'll be able to see things that you won't and give good feedback to each other. But then for me, because I'm an extrovert, I want to work and have that community and feedback, rather than just training by myself.
Sweet, salty, or spicy?
I like all of those things. Oh, okay. If I had to pick one, you see, I love chocolate so much, but I also love chips. Man, that's so hard.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to say sweet because I would have a really hard time giving up chocolate.
Well, no, you could have all three. I mean, and like the chip
Yeah.
thing to me, that's textural, where chocolate is a flavor.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you can have like what was that movie Chocolat, where she was doing like chili powder in the chocolates and then little sea salt on top. You got the whole mix right there in one, right? So
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have a favorite dinosaur or deep sea creature?
Dinosaur. My growing up, my younger brothers really liked dinosaurs. And then watching, Jurassic Park movies and stuff growing up. I mean, velociraptors are pretty cool. I'm really glad we live in a world that doesn't have them because they're scary, but I think they're pretty cool.
Have you ever been around chickens?
Yes. Yes.
Those are velociraptors.
I've heard that.
If chickens weighed 500 pounds, we'd be in trouble. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
We first moved to this barn. It had been abandoned for several years, and we had tons of like frogs and lizards and stuff. And we brought our chickens over here, and I mean, they are predators.
They are.
And the final question: have you ever had a UFO encounter?
No, I haven't. Which is interesting. Living in the country in Illinois, I haven't. They must not like the Midwest very much.
That's fair. Well, let me tabulate your score up here real fast. Let's see. Carry the one. Yeah. Ivy, I have got you at 6,023 points, which makes you our high scorer of all time for
Yeah.
this game. So congratulations on
Thank
that.
you. Thank you.
And that entitles you to your choice of either an awkward silence or a genuine compliment.
I'll take a genuine compliment.
Okay. Well, this is not going to be hard. I really admire your openness. Like I've been around a lot of clinicians, and you are still open to learning, and a whole lot of them aren't so much. I really like that about you. I also think maybe this is part of the extroverted part of you, but I would say that I feel like I actually met you right off of the bat. And there are some people that you can be around them for a whole lot of hours and you're not sure if you've actually met the actual person inside there yet, kind of have the persona or the mask on. And so you show up as your genuine, authentic self. And I think that's pretty obvious. And again, the openness and still looking to learn and all. It's partly why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because I mean, I think you're the real deal, and I really appreciate those parts of you. So,
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Well, our first question to everybody is: would you give us the 30,000-foot view of what it is that you do in the horse business?
I work primarily with gaited horses, any of the gaited breeds, working with riders to get their horses to gait, but using very simple tools, working with like more natural techniques, and to get the horse relaxed and comfortable. And so most of my clients are women over 40 who primarily trail ride. Some people do compete, but I'm not usually like in the gaited horse, not in the show world. My clients usually trail ride or pleasure ride, and they're looking for that horse to be smooth and comfortable. And they want someone to teach them simple exercises to get that in a way that doesn't feel rough or harsh or mean to the horse. Because historically, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that was all that was out there, was put a big bit in, put chains on, put a heavy shoe on. And a lot of the women that were coming into the industry, that was not what they felt like they wanted to do with their horse. And so I primarily do a lot of clinics, travel around the country to do 3-day clinics and help people get the good gait from their horses and kind of build that relationship with their horse along the way as well.
Okay, well, the obvious question that I have to go with after all of that is, tell us more about this desire to run big equipment. So what kind of equipment are we talking about? We're bulldozers or excavators, or do you have I didn't ask you, but you have a favorite piece of big equipment you want to climb on, or what?
So it's kind of a weird reason why I think it would be fun to do that as a job. And it's not because I have, I love large vehicles. Like my nephew is 8 years old, or almost 8 years old, and they know all the bulldozers, all of the construction equipment. I don't, but living on a farm, I drove a skid loader, which I enjoyed. And then one time I was in Virginia on a film set, and they needed someone to move the big John Deere tractor. And I was one of the few people that knew how to drive stick or manual transmission, so I drove it, and I was like, this is really fun. So I don't have like a specific piece of equipment that I think would be cool, but I think, operating like bulldozers or a backhoe or, some of those other large pieces of equipment would be really fun, because the little bit that I've gotten to do it, I've really enjoyed it.
Well, I can tell you, as someone with many hours on things like that, it's fun for the first few hours, and then it can get to be work just like anything else. So, yeah.
I do absolutely believe that.
Once you kind of master it, it's boring. But some of those guys, have you ever seen like excavator operators that can like pop the cap off of beer and stuff? Like how sensitive they can get that big piece of is pretty darn amazing. I've seen guys that they can flip a nickel off the ground into the bucket. Like it is amazing what they can do once you get to that level. But
that is amazing. And I agree with you. I probably would get bored of it, but it's always a good answer.
Yeah, I mean, here's 100-acre of woods and a bulldozer. Like, who would not have a blast for the first few hours of that, right?
Yeah.
If you would not, we can't be friends. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that just would be, yeah.
Yeah.
So you do have experience with gaited and non-gaited breeds. So would you give us a little of your, like you're talking about your own personal horse is not a gaited horse of 22 years. So give us a little bit of your history and kind of how you got into this.
Yeah, so I didn't start riding until I was 15. So before that, I had very little access to horses. So maybe a pony ride or two. And when I was 15, my parents moved to the country and we got our first horse. And she was a quarter horse Mustang. And so my first few horses that my family owned were quarter horse type horses, including the one that I still own now. And I was reading like Western books that were out there at the time. And then I started to read dressage books and get interested in reading that. But I didn't have a lot of formal training. But one of the things before that happened, when I was 15 and I got my first horse, I actually found that riding was boring. And this probably goes back to why I say trail riding is boring. I found riding boring. And you're like, you're a 15-year-old girl. Like, you should have been in heaven. You had your own horse. What else do you want? But it was boring. And when I was 16, my parents are like, if you're not going to do anything with this horse, we're going to sell her, which was a fair thing to say. And I was like, no, wait, let me get a job with horses or something. So I was 16, I got my driver's license, and we had friends who had horses, and I went to them and said, hey, do you need help for the summer? Like, I'm available. Do you need anything with the horses? And they're like, sure. We've got 3 yearlings that need to be handled. Pick their feet up, ground drive, fly spray, tarp, leading, lunging, putting a saddle on, everything but riding. And they were like, they're in the pasture. Come get us if you need help. So it was a very much, we're here to help, but you're on your own, which is really good for me because if you want to get me to quit something, the fastest way to do that is to try to micromanage me. And so they didn't. And so I found that summer working with those yearlings, I love training. I love the problem solving that goes into trying to get a horse to do something that they don't know how to do or don't want to do. What I didn't realize when I first started working for my friends is they raised and bred Rocky Mountain and Kentucky Mountain gaited horses. And so the end of that first summer, they put me on some of their like better trained horses and started to teach me what a good gait was. How to hear it, how to see it. And that was the beginning for me. And I worked for them for 3 summers. And the next summer I got on the 2-year-olds. I wouldn't necessarily get on 2-year-olds with what I know now, but I was young and very lightweight and, and I loved training. And then working for them for 3 years, I loved training the gait. But what I didn't realize or what I found out through that experience was they only knew kind of one way to train gaited horses, which was that we have to use a bigger bit. Like, I started the 2-year-olds with a snaffle, but as soon as we started working on gait, they put a shanked bit in their mouth. And I said, well, why are you doing that? And they're like, well, you can't train a horse to gait in a snaffle. They said that. Like, no one can train a gaited horse to gait in a snaffle. And then there were some horses that were struggling with their gait, and they would put like just a little bit heavier shoe on the front or a little bit longer toe in the back. Not significant and not that harmful. And I was like, me being 18, I was like, that can't be right. That can't be the only way to do this. There's no way. And so when I was 18, 19, I ended up buying a horse from them and training him to gait in a snaffle or a halter or a shanked bit. Like, he could gait perfectly without that. And I was like, clearly everybody was lying, or I was like, I didn't know, at 18, I didn't know why everyone was like, you have to have a shanked bit. And when I was 18, there was no information. There was no YouTube videos to look up. There were no clinicians putting training videos about gaited horses out there. And so from then on, I would buy a couple of horses and train them and do lessons in the area. And just kind of start working on my technique. And as far as walk, trot, canter horses, non-gaited, we started out with quarter horses, and I started doing more Western things, looking at reining, but again, no formal training. So I wasn't really getting lessons. I was just reading books and magazines. And there was a couple years where I didn't have a gaited horse, and I worked with my quarter horse, Jackson. That's the one I still have, who's 22. And I did liberty and trick training and bridleless and some Western, and then did a lot more dressage and really dove into the classical dressage books. And I was like, all of this information about classical dressage, I was like, this has to apply to the gaited horses. And so when I started getting more gaited horses, I started taking the basics and those principles and applying them and having success getting horses to gait with less equipment, maybe a snaffle, maybe a shorter shank, and working on the training aspect and having success. And then I started to share my success on YouTube, and people were finding it and going, this is what I was doing what they wanted to with gaited horses, with their own horses. And that's kind of how I got started. But I still love walk, trot, canter horses. I still love riding them. I love dressage. I want to do more of that going forward. That was a long answer. I'm sorry.
No. That's great. And it gives me more questions to ask. So I'm going to have more trouble keeping this organized because I really have quite a few questions for you here already. But I really agree with what you're saying. I don't have any formal experience in the gaited horse world. I have started a good number of them, but I don't, like I tell the people flat out, I will get them where you can saddle them and you can get on them and they will turn left and turn right and stop and back up, but I don't know how to put them in this gait or whatever. I canter them.
Yeah, I do want to tell you really quickly, most people that are good trainers, with only a little bit of instruction, you could get them gaiting pretty easily. Once you have that feel, with a little bit, you can do a lot, just so you know.
Yeah. I kind of, like, I have ridden them out there, and like you can find there's a little sweet spot here and there where things change and get real smooth, you know.
Yeah.
But then it's like they're all different. I've ridden a variety of breeds, and so you know, like to me, the most recent, I rode a couple of Missouri Foxtrotters, and to me, they feel like they're cantering in the hind and trotting in the front. That is like it's like a horse that almost breaks into the canter but doesn't quite. That's kind of the feel that it has for me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I watch them, you know, ride, and so I've kind of thought of the symmetry of that, because you wonder if they get into this habit of gaiting, and if I am in fact correct, are they like always on the left lead in the hind, or do they actually kind of change that around? So I don't want to develop asymmetry in a horse, but it seems like they could develop that pattern of always going this way pretty consistently, and you do that for 5 years, and I'm sure there's going to be some problems down the road. So am I right? Am I wrong? Like, what are some of the things that you would tell me about gaits that are going to turn some light bulbs on for me?
Very first thing, and this is a tip for anybody with gaited horses that people don't utilize enough. I have a free tool. Everyone has access to this tool. It's called your phone and the slow motion video that you can take. Because people will come to me and be like, my horse is bumpy. What do I do? And I'm like, I actually can't help you until I see how your horse is moving. And so that feeling of kind of that cantering in behind, I would say that's actually incorrect. If you're feeling that, something is not correct with that horse. And so I would tell you, like, get some video of slow motion so we can actually analyze what that horse is doing. And I can either tell you, like, that's normal, which tells you good information, or we can be like, that's not normal, we need to change something. And I rely so much on being able to see things in slow motion. And I think historically, since we didn't have the technology easily available to look at things in slow motion, there are fallacies about gaited horses that have been handed down for 150 years, and no one decided to, like, actually, let's look at what these horses are doing and stop saying what it was 150 years ago, and let's actually say what's going on, or do studies, or actually dive into that now that we have the technology. And so that's my biggest tip is if you're working with a gaited horse and you're like, I'm not sure what's going on, you may not. It may feel really weird. Let's analyze that. Let's actually figure out what is going on.
Okay. That's a very good tip. And I really think the advent of video, and especially now that we all have it in our pocket, like that is a tool people don't. That's powerful. Like there's a lot going on there.
It's so powerful now. And at my clinics, or I did sessions at the Midwest Horse Fair, and I have slow motion footage, and I slow it down and show people, and people are able to understand the gaits probably in a way we never have before, because no one really bothered to show it in slow motion. Well, now that we have the technology, it's very easy. And I think it'll bring a lot more awareness, and not just with gaited. This is true for non-gaited, for people to see where the asymmetry is. We could see that. It's so hard to see in real time.
So I have heard that Roy Rogers' famous Trigger was actually a gaited horse, and we saw all the cool stuff he would do. Or I hope, if you are living this world not knowing who Roy Rogers is, for God's sake, go on YouTube and figure that out. But anyway, so Trigger did all kind of stuff. Was he actually a gaited horse or no?
I believe he was a Tennessee walking horse. And what's really fun is watching older movies and looking to see how many gaited horses you can spot in like Westerns. And you're like, ooh, that's maybe one negative of watching movies with me. I'll be like, that horse is gaited. That horse is gaited. But yeah, there's a lot of horses that, even a lot of saddlebreds, I think, were used for some of those roles at the time as well. And some of them were gaited as well.
Yeah. Well, very cool. Nice little trivia fun fact in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we'll back up a little bit, and I am kind of big on always trying to define things, because I think if we have a conversation and there's something not everybody's on the same page about. So would you tell us about the gene and what it is that makes a gaited horse gaited?
So if I don't know something, I will always say that. And I haven't done a whole lot of studying on the gaited gene, which is called DMRT3. And a horse, the little bit we know, a horse can have 1 or 2 copies of the gene. And in the past, it's looked like if they have 2 copies of the gene, they will 100% gait. And if they have 1 copy, they have a chance of gaiting. And if they have no copies, they're not gaited. That's kind of how it's understood. But actually, I recently had someone comment on my post, and they sent me a link to an article that they did with standardbreds, and they found plenty of standardbreds that were gaited that had no copy of the DMRT3 gene. And so I think the answer to this question is we don't fully know. What it's looking like is the DMRT3 gene is a genetic mutation that occurs kind of in the spine and allows gaited horses, or horses that have it, to have more flexibility and more mobility, giving them more movements than just walk, trot, canter, gallop.
Okay.
But I think we don't know a lot more than that. I think there is not actually a lot of conclusive evidence surrounding that. I wish I had a better answer. I wish we knew more on that. But it sounds like we don't actually know a lot.
No, I like that, and I appreciate your candor. There are multiple things about gaited horses that mystify me. So, like far and away, the most common breed I've been around is Tennessee Walkers, and so here's what mystifies me: like they tend to have a fairly flat tail set, almost like an Arabian, and if you listen to classical conformational talks, that should mean that they cannot get up underneath themselves as well as a horse that's got some slope there. That is absolutely not true. Those horses reach underneath themselves further than any other kind of dadgum horse I've ever been around. They can overstep that. So like there's another thing would be, like, if you look at their butt,
they kind of look weak. There's not a lot of muscle there. They're not like a quarter horse.
Okay.
They
I
don't feel
actually,
weak at all. They can dadgum stretch those legs out there and hold it. And like, there's just what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling don't jive. This doesn't make any sense. Something's not right, So,
well, and I actually have interesting things about that. I think for the horses that look weak, I think they are weak. I think they haven't developed the right kind of muscles. Let's just take walking horses, because that's where you usually see that big overstride. The genetic mutation and the breeding methods that have been in place for the last 70 years or 60 years makes them too loose. So while that hind end can step way far under, that to me is not a sign of strength. That's a sign of being like too loose and not having enough strength to keep the leg sort of underneath them. Because if you look at like dressage, the goal is not to have a huge overstride. It's to have more of that push up and down while stepping under, not as opposed to being strung out. To me, gaited horses, when they're stepping that far under, isn't always a sign of strength. It's not always a negative thing. So there's a lot of caveats that I have. I always tell people, like, my answer often starts with, it depends. It depends on the horse. And so I think there's a lot of walking horses that can step really far under, but it doesn't mean that they're actually strong in the hind end. It means that they've been bred to do that. Like you said, you talked about, like, they have a flat, but they also have been bred to be like really loose and flexible. But sometimes they can step really far under themselves, but not have a lot of strength to actually push as they bring that leg back. A lot of times I think they're pulling with the front end, and that hind leg is not actually pushing very hard. In some cases, not every horse.
So it's like they have loose, stretchy hamstrings almost, where they can bend really far under there. But so like here would be the anomaly to that, or my observation at least is, and you may not know this about me. My background is in cutting horses, so I can put a stop on a horse very, very easily.
Yeah.
The number one problem I have had when I've started gaited horses for their customers is that I can put a ton of stop on a gaited horse accidentally. And more than a few times I have had to go ride that horse and take some stop off because they're not prepared for. And so like they can get underneath there and really, with even splayed legs, where let's say one hind is way underneath and one behind, like they can stop and hold that, which is where I would say they've got strength, because a lot of horses can't, where they might stop that way, but they would then have to square up to hold themselves. And a bunch of these horses don't necessarily have to do that.
That's interesting. I
So
would love
so
to
they're
see
strong in
videos
that.
of that. I would love to see
Okay.
videos of that in
Yeah.
slow motion.
It's been like the stopping thing it has really been a problem. I am now conscious of it, where I've had that happen enough times where if I'm going to start a gaited horse, I'm going to be like, dial this back, or don't let this develop, because it'll be a problem. But
Okay, that's really cool. I'd love to see that. So if you do start another one, or have that opportunity, I'd love to see kind of what they're doing, like analyze what we can see, what muscles are working and stuff like that.
Sure. Okay, so here would be one of my questions, and you brought up the gene thing and the standard breds. So like passos, to me, they're kind of an anomaly. They're considered gaited, but what they do is not the same, or I wouldn't say, it's like tangential to all the other gaited horses. And so are they in their own category, or same deal, or what do you think?
It's another good question. And what we see with the Pasafinos is their movements are the exact same as the other gaited horses, with the exception that many of the Pasafinos take shorter steps, significantly shorter steps with the hind end. Mm-hmm. And I don't work with enough Pasos to have a lot of video to look at yet. But one of the things is the movement, the footfall timing is the same. And so as you start to look at slow motion video, you see the timing could be the same among different breeds. What can change is the length of the stride. That's like the biggest change you'll see. And of course, that changes also with speed, and not just with the breed. And passos are different because they take shorter steps. And I wish we knew more about why that was. But to me, they don't fall in a different category. I train them the exact same way that I train a walking horse. I just know that the finished product won't look the same as a walking horse. But if you have a Passifino that's more on the trotty side or diagonal side, and they're a little bumpy, I would do the same thing for a Passifino that I would do for a Tennessee walking horse that was on the trotty side, and have the same results. Even if a finished horse, the walking horse, when they're gaiting, is going to have that bigger stride and the Passifino won't. But in that case, it's about the timing of the footsteps.
Okay. So one of the differences I thought, or I mean, I've observed, and I've only ridden a few passos.
Yes.
And none recently, but I thought they were supposed to have a genetic difference in the front knee because they wing out, they swing their front legs out and make a big like half circle.
That would be a Peruvian passo,
okay,
not a Passifino. That they do that termino or something. I'm not sure how you say it. Where they have that winging, and that's a good question. I'm not sure about the genetics for that one. And I haven't worked with very many Peruvians, and the ones I have, they do move. Other than the foot moving out, move very similar to all the gaited breeds. So it's possible there's also an additional genetic component that breed has, but you treat them the same as all the other breeds.
Okay. So see, that would be another, and I hadn't really thought about this, but talking about strength in the hind, like one of the characteristics defining things I would say I'm looking for them to have or not have if I'm evaluating whether this horse is strong is kind of soft hocks is how I would describe it. So if they can kind of squat in the back and hold, that takes strength, and a lot of horses can't, or you can develop them into doing it more, but like when you start with them, they can't do that.
Right.
And so that's one of my most formative memories of the passos is that like right from the get-go when you sent them going, they dropped in the hind and kind of had a real squishy sort of like it was weird. I never quite got used to it. And those boogers were all of the ones I've dealt with, which again is not a ton. They were all very snorty. So like even you go to catch them in the stall and they're in the back corner just like they've never seen a human before. But if you put them on the trail and you let them get into that little deal, like I was jumping quail, deer, like nothing rattled them. If you tried to make them walk nice and easy, then the world bothered them. You let them get into their little gait and they were happy as a clam and just moving right on down the way. So but again, that's probably been 30 years or 25 years.
I would say that's a matter of the training that horse has had. That is not a feature of the breed or of gaited horses in general. That's a very common
I would tend to say the same guy owned all of these horses, and he's one of the, I'll say the word, he was cheap. So they probably were the discount rat, day old bred kind of. So I'm not going to say they were great examples of the breed or anything. He bought them because they were on sale. No, I have no questions. So anyway, whatever that's worth.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you define for us some of the different gaits? So like a Tennessee Walker, you're saying they all kind of move the same. Like I know we've got a pace, which is a dirty word in my experience. Nobody wants to see a pacey kind of horse. So I guess why don't you define that and say what we're generally looking for, maybe what the different gaits are and the differences between them. Sorry if that's a huge question to throw on you, but
no, it is. But I should be. I mean, it's my job. I should be able to break that down and have it make sense. First thing we're going to talk about is not breeds or breed standards or breed terms, but we're going to define things by what the horse's feet are doing, no matter what breed it is. Okay. And what I would tell anybody listening, if you're not sure, Best way to tell is to video that in slow motion and look at it in slow motion. And again, most of us, our phones will do that now, so it's easy. So you mentioned the pace. The pace is what we call a lateral gait, where the two legs on one side swing forward and back together. And yes, no one wants it. The only exceptions are standardbreds in harness racing, and then in the Icelandic world, part of their advanced classes include a flying pace, which is just a really fast pace. But those are like the two exceptions. Otherwise, no one wants to see it, but it is very common in the gaited world. And side note, in case your listeners don't know, there are gaited horses in quarter horses can be gaited, Arabians can be gaited, Mustangs can be gaited, Appaloosas can be gaited, and every once in a while, the Baroque horses like Andalusians can be gaited. Rare, but they exist. So that's the pace. So the pace, or I call the spectrum of gaits, you have the pace, which is that lateral movement where the two legs on one side move. On the opposite side of the spectrum, you've got the trotty movement or diagonal movement. We know what the trot is. It's the trot, just like a quarter horse does. And in the middle is the movement that we all gaited horse owners desperately want. It's the evenly timed 4-beat movement. That's where it's smooth. And I call it the saddle rack, but you don't have to have a specific name. You have to understand that it's the evenly timed, the footfalls land at even intervals. That's what makes that horse be smooth. And it's right in the middle between the trot and the pace. And every breed of gaited horse is capable of doing it. Go ahead.
Okay, so isn't that just the walk?
Good question. The walk is that tempo, evenly timed movement with evenly timed between each footfall. So yes, the gaited horse, like if you speed a quarter horse's walk up, they're going to go into a trot. With gaited horses, they have the ability to do that same pattern as the walk, but significantly faster. It's the difference between us walking and trying to like power walk, and there's a point where we have to change where we lean forward and we start to jog to get that transition. And there's something, and we haven't studied this enough to have a good answer, but something changes where it's no longer a walk and you're now going faster. And it tends to be something between 5.5 miles an hour, and of course it can go on up to very fast if you're in the speed racking world. But for most horses, 5.5 miles to 8 or 9 miles an hour is a very normal speed range. That would be what, you're right, it's the same footfall as the walk, but no quarter horse can walk like that. It's not a walk anymore. Where if you think about the walk, there's always 2 feet on the ground and often part of a third. Like the toe is on the ground, or you'll see significant moment where there's 3 feet on the ground at the walk. When a horse is doing that evenly timed 4-beat movement, there's going to be a moment of time, there's going to always be 2 feet on the ground. But usually you won't see a solid third. It'll be like 2 feet solidly on the ground and then a toe, like the toe just about to lift off. Where at the walk, you have a moment where all 3 feet are on the ground, sort of almost flat. And then when you go faster, you get to what we call the single foot or the speed rack, where there's a moment of time with only 1 foot on the ground, and then 2 feet on the ground, and then 1 foot on the ground, and then 2 feet. And that's what we call the fast halt, the single foot, or the speed rack. And that movement does not have a moment of suspension. There will always be at least 1 foot on the ground. So I can keep going unless you have a follow-up question to what I just said.
No, that like I've seen horses look like they're going 30 miles an hour doing that. That's that deal.
Yes.
And I mean they're flying, but
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I really would like to get good slow motion footage of that. You know, there's like no good slow motion footage of speed rackers out there, which I think is amazing. But I did a deep dive a year ago on it to try to figure out what the exact footfalls were, which is really interesting. But most people don't do speed racking. Like most of my clients are not doing that really fast 30 miles an hour. But when we've got the gait spectrum, we've got, you've got the pace and you've got the trot and you've got the nice evenly timed 4-beat movement. But the trick, this is where a lot of people get hung up, is so between your evenly timed 4-beat movement and the pace is a 2-beat movement like the trot. So it'll sound the same as a trot. It'll be clop, 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 clop. But in between those two is what we call the stepping pace or the step pace, where it's a 4-beat movement, so it doesn't sound like the trot, but it's unevenly timed. So the evenly timed movement is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or pucka, pucka, pucka. And the uneven stepping pace is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the closer you get to even, the smoother it gets. But the closer you get to 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, the bumpier it gets. And the same is true if you go to the trotty or diagonal side of the spectrum, is that it also gets smoother the closer it gets to even, and the closer it is to the trot, the bumpier it is.
Okay. That is interesting. So is there, this may be a stupid question, but like I have always heard there were like 5 different gaits within the gated thing. Like you have the single foot thing and all of this. So is that true from your perspective? Like, are we training this horse would have 3 different gears, so to speak, of different gaits so he'll do this gait and then I could cue him to do this gait and then he could do this gait, or are we really just revving up RPMs and it's the same movement sped up, or like what's really going on there?
Yes. Okay. So in the saddle rack, which is what I call saddle rack, just evenly timed 4-beat movement. Every breed can do it. That's why I train it the most. That's what I do the most. It is mostly just the same exact movement sped up. And so it's not a different name. It's just like you can have a jog, which is a slow trot, and then you can have an extended trot, and it's still a trot. Nothing has changed except like stride length and suspension, but like it is the same movement. Same thing with once your horse is gaiting. You can gait slowly and you can gait fast. And the only change that happens at a certain point of speed is it goes from having always 2 feet on the ground to having a moment of time with 1 foot on the ground and then 2 feet, which is that single foot or that speed rack that people see.
Okay. I'm going to take a little change of direction just because this is where my brain is right now. So, in your opinion, should these horses also be capable of just walking along calmly?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
That is a training. That is a training issue, not a breed issue.
Like we do have a bunch of trail riding in this area, and I've been a clinician. We have a women's riding retreat and stuff, and like in all those things, there's always a gated horse group and a non-gated group, because the gated group's going to go too fast, and the non-gated horses are going to be trotting, going, keeping up and catching up, and I've always I've started a bunch of these things. I could walk down the trail just like why is that a problem now? Or so no, that's the
Yeah, it's a training issue. A friend of mine in New Hampshire, I do not know why it suddenly got dark there. That's weird. A friend of mine in New Hampshire, she has a farm and she has a lot of gaited horses and a lot of riders, and she leads these small trail rides. And when she gets a young gaited horse there, she trains them. She walks for like a year on these horses because she wants them to know that when we trail ride, we are just going to walk and go slowly. And so that's definitely something you train. And what most of my clients find is that so many gaited horses literally haven't been trained. I mean, not saying that you were training them, but most of these horses, the default training method is you just get on and point them in a straight line and go. And to me, that's not a fun experience. Like, I want it to be I want to be on a much better trained horse than that. So the short answer, you get me started, I'll just keep going. But the short answer is they can all learn to walk slowly. All of them.
And I like a big part of your deal is about getting them to relax and all of that. I think that's one of those steps that gets passed over a lot of times where they kind of have this ball of anxiety all the time. They can't stand still or anything. And I've always thought like, doesn't need to be that way. That
Yeah,
horse should be able to stop and stand still and relax and down regulate and all those
I completely
same
agree with
kinds
you.
of things. So this will be an oddball question, but are you at all familiar in the non-gated world with the ranch horse versatility that's going on? Kind of a new class that's
Only a little bit because the people at the barn I board, they're interested in that. But I don't know any specifics. I just know that it is something that's beginning.
so it's kind of been, and I've never shown in it. I'm not an expert in it, but this is what piques my interest in it. Um, it's a more stripped down class, so it's not shiny shirts and silver saddles and all of that stuff. It's more, for the kind of less showy of us out there. But one of the things that it's supposed to really exhibit is your control over transitions and
Mm.
speed control within the gates. So, like, you might have to exhibit a slow jog and then an extended trot. And so, one of the parts of that where you can really separate yourself is the fast walk. And so
Ah,
I would say in the last 10 years, I think more people have worked on the fast walk in quarter horses than probably all of time prior. And they
wow.
have got some of these suckers flying at the walk now. Like
Yeah.
like I would say almost to the degree where it's like we took a good concept and perverted it. Like it is a what is that? Kind of but a seriously stretched out walk for a non-gated horse. So I was just curious if you're familiar with that or had seen it, or you might want to look into it because maybe there's something, yeah, something blurring some lines out there. But I mean, honest, I work on that stuff a lot. I would not say I have gotten any of my horses to the degree that I have seen in there. Usually, if I can get them doing about 80% of what I think they're physically capable of doing, I'm pretty happy with that. But there's some guys out there doing like 118% of what I thought
Wow.
a horse could physically do at the walk. Like they're flying around there walking. So why don't we talk about what I would deem a couple of the patterns I've seen pretty clearly in the gaited horses where I would say they might be a little weak. So one thing I would say is I find them generally to be kind of immature
Okay.
on the growing up side. I don't know how many like, but to me they're like 6 by the time they get some of the silly, goofy, unpredictable stuff out of their system. And I tend to love them. Like an 8-year-old gaited horse, like
Yeah.
they're generally, but among the colts that I have started, like I have seen some where the hell did that come from sort of stuff more than a few times. So you agree with that? I don't know if you've had enough experience with that may be normal to you or what,
Yes and
but
no. So yes and no. I have absolutely encountered many of those horses that were not very sensible until they were 8 years old. I own one. She's going to be 7 in August, and she was the klutziest. As a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, she was so just calm, but klutzy. And so I waited a lot longer to start her, like to do a lot of riding till she was way more mature because I could. I wasn't in a rush. I have plenty of horses to ride, when you're a trainer. Yeah.
yeah.
But I also have known 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds that are very mature and solid with their footing and balanced. And I do think it depends on the breed and the bloodlines and the training. But I'm not so. I think there are both of those out there. Like last year, my friend has a Rocky Mountain Stallion. He was 4 years old, and we took him through several of the NATRAC rides, which is the competitive trail rides. And he was a stallion, and he did very well, especially the last one. So he was like a little over 4.5 years old, and he did excellent on the trail and did really, really well as a young horse. But there's other horses I know people said they were almost like dangerous until they turned like 8 years old and then they settled down. So I
Mm-hmm.
do think on the whole, they mature later than other horses, but just like in every breed, there's always exceptions.
And I would say even within the quarter horse, where I'm a lot more familiar with the
Yes.
bloodlines, like there are some bloodlines that are just freaking goofy for, when they're babies.
The
And
people at the barn have some of the goofy ones that I
yeah,
would not
so
choose to own.
yeah,
They have nice horses, but they're like, oh yeah, these ones, they just all buck. And I'm like, no, thank you. I would not choose to own that. But
yeah, I could definitely introduce you to some of those too. So the other thing that I would say, and I really can't think of an exception to this, this is probably the most thing I associate with the gaited horses, is that they all seem to have physical difficulty with lateral movements. So it's not that you can't get them doing it, but like compared to a quarter horse, it just takes 10 times as much time before they kind of figure out where to put their feet. And so they may be trying. I'm not saying they're
oh,
dumb, but
yeah.
they seem to physically have a challenge with moving laterally. So you've experienced that as well?
Yeah, I
Or
think I think you're more likely to find that with gaited horses that are on the pacey side of the spectrum, the lateral side, versus if you worked with a horse that was a little more on the trotty or diagonal side. But I would say as a whole, they struggle to do lateral, and they need the lateral work to help them to move better. Like it's really, really good for them, but it is often very hard for them.
So I've never really like held it against them. I mean, if you
Yeah,
have this
yeah,
physical anomaly and they can do this thing other horses can't, it kind of makes sense that there's a
yeah.
trade-off of, but we have a little more difficulty doing this other thing. So I've just often wondered, is there a thing here, if I understood Gates better, because I'm very much a feel the feet guy, and maybe there's just a timing to this that I am getting wrong because of my experience with it. And if I could only feel this other thing and boom, then that door would open. It would be easy for them. Because I definitely have seen people with quarter horses. If you don't have the timing of the feet right and all, and you're asking these
Yeah.
things at the wrong time, then, but I've definitely not developed the point where maybe if I rode with you a month, then I would have this gated stuff down and it would all make sense, but
Would
still
probably
very
not.
much.
It probably wouldn't take a month, just so you know. Like when I've worked with trainers, and even just in a few days, you can learn so much about getting it and feeling it in just a few days when you're already a trainer. It
Mhm.
becomes a lot easier. I don't know.
Yeah. And there's like I like riding the Tennessee Walkers, especially when I get one that has been gait trained.
Yes.
The the fun part about it to me, I feel like I'm on a spider because I see legs in my peripheral that I am not normally seeing. Like they have this reach with their legs flinging them out there. It's just like, I feel like I could just point them at that tree and just zing off we go, and
It's so
here's
fun.
legs flying, and it's great.
It's very
So,
fun.
um so in terms of like the thing y'all are looking for here is the smoothness.
Yes.
So is that a pretty much that's the guide, if things aren't smooth, something is wrong and we need to be looking for that sweet spot, or
Yes. With the exception of just like in all breeds, conformation plays a factor as to how smooth your horse will be. There are horses that they're like Cadillacs. Like there is you just float. And then there are breed and they're doing, let's just say the timing is even on their footfalls. And then you have another horse, often horses with shorter backs will be doing the same movement. The movement is correct, but there's gonna be like this wiggle, like you won't be bouncing, but there's more movement in the saddle. And that's not a training issue, that's a matter of the conformation. But yes, it is that timing, it is getting that evenly timed movement. And one of the things people are always asking me, like, what does the gait feel like? And I'm like, well, unfortunately, there's no easy answer because every horse is different. Every horse feels a little different when they're gaiting. And your horse may have more movement than another horse, but generally, a good rule of thumb is if your shoulders are bouncing, you're not gaiting and we need to address something.
okay. So have you ever seen like the champagne class? I know we had that at one exo where they would all ride around with a champagne, or it was more
A
like a
glass of something.
martini glass or some, yeah, but
Yes.
it was a don't spill the, Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got a lot of ways to go here. I'm gonna, since you mentioned conformation, and we've talked about it before, but so here would be another one of those issues I've had with the gaited horses, and that is set. So they really kind of are built differently in the back and the withers and all of that stuff. So what should, I guess most of your customers are in the gaited world and they've already got gaited horse saddles, but like what are the differences there? Things, are you likely to have a standard quarter horse saddle and it's going to work and you can just make this adjustment, or no, it's not happening. These are not like the
Not
other.
usually. Not usually. Quarter horses tend to have so I'm not full, like I've had quarter horses, so I know a little bit. Quarter horses have more of a flatter type back. Gaited horses often have very broad shoulders, even narrow horses, but instead of like needing bars to be like this, they need them shaped a little more upright, but they are often very wide. And so often when you put a quarter horse saddle on a gaited horse, it'll touch along the top but not have a lot of good contact in other places that it should. So rarely will a quarter horse bars or a regular quarter horse saddle fit a gaited horse. But you don't always need a gaited saddle per se. Sometimes they can be tricky to fit. Let me just say, I feel for those people who have a gaited horse who is very difficult to fit, because those are out there, and those are usually the ones with the short backs. And those can be in all different breeds, though you're going to see a lot of shorter backs in Rocky Mountain, foxtrotters, standardbreds. They're more likely going to have that than a walking horse. And they can be difficult to fit because they are, like you mentioned, they are shaped differently.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I did pose to my Facebook group, Bit Spurs in Good Sense, that we were going to be having a conversation with you, and kind of open the floor to them if they had any questions. There are actually quite a few that seem to have the same theme of getting non-gaited or traditionally non-gaited breeds to exhibit a gait.
I did see those questions, and I happen to own same book that was brought
okay.
up.
Well, go ahead then. I'll just turn the floor over to you.
Oh, this is going to be a really short answer. I know that there are a lot of books that, not a lot, there are especially older books like this era. I've got a few that claim that they can get a non-gaited horse to gait, and I make no such claims to have that ability.
Okay.
That's the very short answer. I know there are quarter horses that are gaited, and if you have any breed of horse and you see paciness in their movement, they likely can be developed into more of a gait. But if you have a quarter horse that just moves like a quarter horse, I would never undertake that to say that I could train it to gait.
Okay. So I will say I have a quarter horse. I own him, and I've had him 12, 15 years, something like that.
Yeah.
He's honestly one of my problem children, but he is definitely from one of those genetic lines of like schizophrenic screwball kind of horses. But he has always had that kind of I mean, I don't mean this in a condescending way, but what I would call kind of a weird feel, the same sort of thing gaited horses tend to have under me. It's almost like we're doing this on a bowling ball rolling along or something. Like there's just a different kind of a thing going on underneath me that's not what, and he's always had that. And it stands to reason, like there was at some point this genetic anomaly, and there were horses went from this one didn't gait and then its son did, and so maybe that anomaly's happened more than once. So do you have any thoughts on that if we have that quarter horse that moves a little bit different?
Yeah. So if you have that horse, whether it's a quarter horse or another breed, and you're like, man, it's a little different, like my friend Chrissy just messaged me, the horse that played Shadowfax in Lord of the Rings. She said, she just literally now sent me a reel, and she said she didn't know he was gaited. I think he's an Andalusian. And so there exist also in Andalusians that some of them have that ability to gait, and quarter horses, they exist in Arabians. If you have that horse with that feeling, you can absolutely, if you want, develop it into more of an intentional movement. But there are people that say, Ivy, I've got a quarter horse and I think he's gaited. And they're like, but I don't want the gait. And what I would say is you don't have to develop it if you don't want to. You could just say, we're going to train, walk, trot, canter, gallop. That's it. And that's fine too. But that if that does exist, that is something that could be developed into an intentional cue. And you can continue to train the trot as well. You can have both if you want.
Okay, so let me ask you the $1 million question here, and if this is like a proprietary thing you don't want to give away, so like what is the cue? How do you get a gaited horse to gait? What are you doing up there that makes the difference?
That is the $1 million question, and usually my answer is not very satisfactory to people, and I am going to answer it. It's not proprietary, but before I do, I think you have some sponsors.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
They want to stay for hear the answer.
Yep. Okay. So, let me say first off, we have an actual sponsor, and I meant to do this after the ice round questions, but Death Grip Mustache Wax, and people have questioned me whether this is legit. This is legitimate. It is an actual company. This is not a mock deal. So we have an actual sponsor, and you can get a coupon code. I will have it in the show notes. It is AOH Pod. Will give you 20% off their products. I use their products. Very good beard conditioners and oils and mustache waxes and all sorts of great grooming products. So shout out to them and thank y'all very much. And Ivy's husband is a bearded man, and so we're going to be sending some beard oils your way. And if he wants to do the longer mustache thing, then I can sure. You may not want him to do that. I don't know. There's a little bit of a learning curve on kissing when that happens. But anyway, so. But for Ivy's episode, our traditional mock sponsor is Guillermo's Gargantuan Gaited Gadgets. Do you have a gaited horse and sometimes feel out of control? Is their gait lacking all that it could be? Have you been told that your horse needs more head shake? If this sounds like you, then Guillermo's Gargantuan Gaited Gadget has what you need. We are the very first bit company to break the foot-long cheek barrier on our bits. Guillermo's Bigfoot Gargantuan Gaited Bit is just what you've been looking for. They'll gait and shake like a champion and still stop when you're ready. We've brought in the nephew of a guy who was fired from Tesla to reinforce our Bigfoot bits, so you won't even have to worry about bending a shank when trying to stop. What if your horse isn't reaching up under like he should and is overstepping less than 18 inches? I'm so glad you asked. We've got a brand new sphincter tincture that will have them stepping like a goat fresh out of the pepper patch. Those hind legs will be flailing like a duck in 3-foot seas. Maybe your horse lacks a little front end action. Well, we've combined Kevlar, carbon fiber, and titanium springs to bring you the world's first horseshoe with rebound, Guillermo's landmines. As soon as your horse's front leg hits the ground, those ground reaction forces are going to be popping that foot back up and forward like a landmine. Explosive is the only description, and these will even pass a flat shod cat class as of now. In short, if you've got a gaited horse that isn't bringing you the action you paid for, Guillermo's got your back and a product that'll make things happen no matter what. Okay.
That's great.
So you say don't make fun of gaited people, but we got to have a little rub in there somewhere.
That's okay. I feel like that's well deserved.
So I tell you what, okay. I'll shift gears since we talked about that. Or no, you ready to jump on?
I'm gonna answer the question. So remember your question, but we're gonna answer the question. So the question was what is the cue? What do you do to make a horse gait? And what I teach is there is no magic cue. There is no certain way to ride. There's no certain way to sit. There's no certain way to hold the reins that is going to get every gaited horse to gait. Most gaited horses have the ability to do all the things that I mentioned. They can trot, pace, and do the saddle rack. They can gait. And in between movements. And so how does your horse know which of those movements you want them to do? Quarter horses are significantly easier in that intermediate gait is just trot. But gaited horses can do 5 different things. They can do trot, broken trot, saddle rack, stepping pace, pace. How do you get the horse to know? The way I teach is that when the horse gets smooth, and there are techniques to help them get smooth, but when they get smooth, I stop and I praise instantly. So when you get those couple steps of smooth gait, you stop, you let that horse rest and relax for 30 to 60 seconds or longer, depending on the situation. And the horse, a couple things happen when you stop and praise. The horse gets relief. You basically cease all cues and you're standing there and they relax. It resets their nervous system. They can regulate, and that's the goal, is that they can regulate while they're standing. And there is a thing that humans do. I don't know that they've studied it for horses, but humans have something that's called system mode. I forgot the last word. It's like system mode recovery. It's not that. And it's this where your brain takes something it was just learning and takes it from short-term memory and moves it to long-term memory storage. So you could be learning a new skill. And system mode network, that's what it is. It's called system mode network. And it takes it from short-term to long-term memory. And I think some of that is happening with horses as well, because they've moved differently. And in this case, it's a way we want their feet to move. And instead of doing what everyone else does, and all you have to do is work with a few riders and they all just try to keep going. They're like, okay, that feels good, keep going. But inevitably, the horse loses that beautiful movement that we're all looking for and goes back to doing the, pacing or trotting. And what I teach is if you stop and praise when you get that smooth movement, within a few rides or even an hour, you are going to get more of that movement because you've reinforced the thing that you want.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same thing you do for side pass or, any other. Yeah.
Yes. It is. It's not just gaiting. It's cantering. It's lead changes. It's side passing. I have a lady, so I produce a lot of content where I talk about stop and praise. You can call it stop and soak. You can, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. And there's a lady, she does dressage, and she reached out to me and said she had watched one of my videos and she started implementing it more. And she would have her student do a flying lead change. And then she'd make them stop and to praise the horse and for them to think about it. And they just want to do it again. And she's like, no, this is a valuable part of training anything. And you take that. So let's think dressage, right? We know that you need to be able to do a whole pattern. You're like, Ivy, you cannot just stop and praise after one lead change. We need, 1 tempi lead changes. You're like, I need to be able to do a whole 10-minute pattern. Of course, you work up to that. Just like we want our gaited horses to gait for more than 3 steps, we build that up. We build the duration. We build the behavior chains just like you would. So you start with 1 step of a side pass. You don't ask them to side pass perfectly the first time. You build that understanding and that duration, and it's the same thing for gaiting, which is different than quarter horses. When they trot, it's just trot. But with gaited horses, it's the same thing. Apply that, what you would with side passing, and apply it to getting gait.
So I'm going to ask the asshole question now, okay?
Go for it.
We built a little rapport, and I don't feel like I'm going to offend you. So if this is natural,
yes,
why does it have to be trained? Like, I don't have to teach a fish how to swim, and
yes.
So why do I have to teach a gaited horse how to gait?
Because he can do 5 different movements. And he will choose to do one of those 5 movements, and it may not be the one you want. So they have that natural ability, the genetic ability to gait, but not to only do that movement. So they're not bred to only do the smooth movement. They're bred to move differently. So they can trot, broken trot, saddle rack, smooth, stepping pace, pace. And your horse is naturally designed to either do all of those or more on one side of the spectrum than the other. And he will choose whatever feels good to him or whatever he's already been trained to do. Okay. So if you have a horse, that has the natural ability to do that smooth movement, but he can do any of those, why would he pick the smooth movement?
So it's not unlike just because I have this quarter horse colt and I've seen him loping around in the pasture, it doesn't mean I can get on him and ask for the left lead and get it immediately. That is a language we have to develop until I have that.
Or we know they can do flying lead changes in the pasture. How come we can't just get on and have them execute a perfect lead change? Or, we see horses, doing passage in the pasture, doing fancy things. Well, we don't get on them and immediately, even though we know they can naturally do it, it doesn't mean that they can just naturally do that with a rider on or even know what we're asking.
So a little bit of a change of direction. I just want to clarify this because you've mentioned it several times. It sounds like the pace is the inroad for all of these horses. You're even mentioning, like with a quarter horse, if they seem a little pacey, then that's one you can probably teach to gait. And so, and I don't mean this.
Oh yeah.
This is a genuine question.
Yeah.
Why is the pace so hated if it seems to be like the thing that is the gate to, the doorway to this road or whatever? Why is a pace undesirable? Like, that seems arbitrary to me, but maybe it's not. So what is
maybe it is arbitrary. Like, I'm not gonna so for whatever reason, quarter horses that are not gaited will never pace. Okay? They're never going to do it. If they don't have that ability, I'm not going to say that you can't put chains on them and make them, but like, they will never, there's never any moment of time where they will ever pace. Gaited horses, if they have the ability to do a gait, they always have the ability to pace. But the pace is not desired, with only a few exceptions, like they do flying pace in Icelandics. It is not a desired movement because it's bumpy. But for some reason, it is very prevalent in the gaited horse world, especially in walking horses. But in every gaited breed, there exists many horses that are pacey. And so that it must somehow, as soon as they have the ability to gait, it must mean that that ability to pace is there. So I don't know that that's a direct answer to your question. Probably the answer is I'm not quite sure. We don't want to ride the pace, but
yeah. It's fair. Like, I would say, and I think this is maybe a different, like, gaited horse people seem to be their own kind of group of people, just like mule people are they're like, they are within the horse industry, but they kind of tends to attract a certain type of person. Like, smooth isn't a huge thing on my radar. I ride the trot all the time. And so, like, a horse has to jar your teeth out of your head before it's noteworthy. To me, but for the ones that I have ridden, I don't, and I say this because I've been yelled at before by the owners. Like, apparently I find the pace pretty smooth. It's not an objectionable red flag pop up to me, but I'm used to riding a trot and all that kind of stuff, which also isn't objectionable to me. Mm-hmm. So pace to me is still pretty damn smooth. Yeah. So I guess.
Okay. So yeah, two answers to that is there are some pacey horses that are decently smooth, especially when you compare it to a quarter horse's trot. So you're not wrong. And a lot of people have gone through their life owning a gaited horse thinking that the pace was the gait because it was smoother than a trot. So you're right. But two things also exist. Also, there are some pacey horses that are horrible to ride their pace. It is just as bad as a really bumpy quarter horse, like one of the ones that like is very jarring. And two, I have no proof of this. It's a personal opinion. I think when you have a horse that is pacing with the weight of a rider on their back, it's often going to be damaging to them just because of how they move their body in the pace. Mm-hmm. And often we see weakness if they are doing a lot of pacing.
That's fair. I mean, I definitely can understand that. I knew keeping this organized was going to be my biggest challenge with you here, but so do we have, like, I'm familiar with the story of Traveler and Robert E. Lee and the Tennessee Walking Horse and all. Do we kind of have a common ancestor where we knew this came from, or because I mean, there's gaited horses on different continents going back way further than just a few hundred years. And so do we have any idea of where this originated, or the oldest breed, or
Uh,
not?
so history is not my strong suit, so I'll tell you right now, I don't know. There are probably people out there that could give a much more educated answer on that. I don't know.
That's fair. And to be honest, like I get bit questions about stuff like that, and to like the history of bits is not what I care about. I don't, I'm not going to tell you this culture originated. That's not my
And that's
area.
not me.
So that's totally fair.
Yeah, that's not my area. There are some people that love their breed and they've researched and they know so much, and that's not me. So, yeah, I don't know.
So on that topic, have you worked with very many gaited mules?
A few.
Good.
A
Is there
handful.
much difference there, or because we're talking about the genetic side of this? Like
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you can inform me here. Is there a genetically gaited donkey that
There
could? So
are.
we're okay.
Okay, so I don't know about the gene, but there are gaited donkeys. Yes.
Okay.
And if you are trying to get a gaited mule, you will probably have the absolute most success when you breed, a gaited mare to a gaited jack. Or because they tend to look more pacey than just straight gaited, but they'll be advertised as gaited often.
Okay.
If it's a jack that's standing.
As I was, isn't there a South American donkey I was thinking it was a mule, but I think that's a donkey now that you're
It
saying
might
that.
be. I have no knowledge of that. That's a
Okay.
good. Like I know here because I'm in Texas, somewhere like a couple hours from me, there's a gaited jack. And like if I were to ever try to breed for a gaited mule, I'd probably like look for one like that one. To have the best chance
Mm-hmm.
of getting a gaited mule. Gaited mules, you train the same way you train a horse in terms of getting gait. The difficulty comes in how the mule was trained, whether they're trying to work with you or they're not. And the ones that try and are personable and have had good training, they learn very quickly, like you'd expect. The ones that don't seem to try for different reasons can be difficult to get gaiting because they're just not really working with you. And so I've worked with absolutely wonderful mules, got them gaiting in just a couple of days, and had other ones that were much harder to get gaited.
So you are kind of, and we haven't really gotten into the techniques and the tack and that kind of stuff yet, but you are we don't need a bit with reinforced shanks and all of
100%.
that kind of stuff to get them to gait. And so how do you feel about the pads, chains, big lick, and all of that stuff? Is this acceptable to you, or can be done acceptably, or it's a hard pass?
No,
Or
it's a hard no. I think it's really sad for the horses. I've also worked with horses that were padded horses. And when we say padded, we're talking about the stacks that they use in certain classes. What we call it, it's often referred to as big lick walking horses. And instead of just having like shoes on, they're put on 4-inch stacks that are nailed to their feet, and they don't come off during show season. So they just stand in a stall with this horrible thing. And I think it's so hard for the horses. And then riding horses that have come out of that, they move in a way that is not natural. They weren't born with it, and it's a very awkward thing to fix. And I feel so sorry for horses that are being shown that way, that have to live that way. So I'm not anti show ring, but I am anti big lick, and generally I'm anti big bits if the bit is just there because you didn't want to spend the time training.
so is that exclusively, and I'm not trying to start wars here. Again, this is a genuine question because I just don't have, I have friends in that world, and that, boy, there's a river in between them, and I have, I don't, like I have a farrier friend that does that. And you look at those pads and you're just like, oh my God, and he swears that, he's got horses that are in their 20, like it doesn't affect soundness. It's not really an issue to them. They build up the muscle. They're fine. It doesn't. And I know him. He's not a jerk. Like, I don't think he's out there hurting. And so, but I don't have enough knowledge to really have a strong opinion on it because it does look, but I also know like people would look at a spade bit and have the same kind of reaction and go, oh my God, why do and I understand that apparatus and like, no, it's not what you think it is if you don't really understand it. So,
yeah, well, the only thing I would say about when you look at a horse that's in stacks and is moving, that horse was not born to move that way. None of that is how they move in the pasture naturally. Compared to gaited horses, you can see gaited horses gaiting, just like doing the same thing I train them to do, loose in the pasture.
Okay. So my next question on that, and I get again, I'm not trying to box you in a corner. This is all genuine. So we have also like weighted shoes. So like you can even get into the Arab world, which is not a horse I normally would put on the list of gaited horses, but there are those that would, and so do you have any thoughts or feelings to tell us on that? I don't feel like I can intelligently explain that, but I definitely have some farrier experience too.
Yeah, so I can tell you why people use weighted shoes. There is this idea that by putting weights on a shoe, so we're not talking about big stacks now, just different weights or toe weights. The idea is to change the timing of the footfall by putting weights on. And at times it is effective for changing the gait. How effective it is long term is something I would always question. And I question if there is harm happening by using weighted shoes for more than a very short period of time. Okay, so I'm not trying to vilify anyone who maybe they show their gaited horses for 3 or 4 months and they put weighted toes on just for showing and then they take them off, right? I'm not trying to say like, oh, that's horrible, like how dare you? Like there's always reasons for different things. But I think if your solution, because you can't get your horse to gait, is just to put weights on, I think that shows potentially a lack of training with the horse, that more can be done where you don't need the toe weights. And there are some lines of thought that say adding weights to the horse's foot will cause faster wear and tear on a horse's body. And that's more where I would come down, where I would never personally choose to put weights on in a way that was permanent. So I have and I always want to give so many caveats because you can have a horse that's struggling to gait, and sometimes you could put a hoof boot, because I'm a big fan of hoof boots. You can put that on the horse's foot, and sometimes, very rarely, it will affect the gait. But those hoof boots come off when I'm done riding. So it is never something that is permanently on the horse, but I never use any kind of weight other than just a plain hoof boot to get gait, personally.
Yeah, and this could be an area again of just my ignorance. I genuinely don't know. The weighted shoes that I have seen, like we're talking ounces. Like it's just like an extra little piece of shoe that's here. It's not like a major
right.
Sort of a change. That's not to say that there aren't ones that have way more out there than I'm just not aware of. I don't know, but the ones I've seen are the weight change is not extreme.
I think that's way less damaging than many other practices in the gaited world. And I know that sometimes they do it specifically to get a higher lift for the front leg in the show ring, but that'll often come off when the show season ends. And so I have much less objection to that than many other things that happen in the gaited horse world.
Yeah, because like even if we're just trimming a foot, you can affect gait by longer toe, shorter toe, higher heel, shorter, like with no shoe or anything. You can affect gait there.
Yes.
On a non-gated breed. I'm even saying. So.
No, yeah, 100%.
So kind of, we're talking a little bit about different breeds here. What would be some of the differences between the breeds? Like in your world, is the Tennessee Walker the most, like I've probably I don't know. In terms of gaited horses, I probably see like 8 out of 10 of them are Tennessee Walkers. Like, is it? I don't know if that's just my world or if it is
There
that
are
dominant of a breed out there, or what.
there are way more Tennessee walking horses and spotted saddle horses than most of the other breeds. So that's a pretty. I don't find that to be necessarily true at my clinics in terms of who shows up, but there's significantly more walking horses than the other breeds in the United States. So that's very true. I train gaited horses the same way, no matter what the breed is. Because again, my clients, that would be different if I was showing. Because if you're going to show a Tennessee walking horse, you need to know the movements and gaits that they're going to require in the show ring. Or a Rocky Mountain, right? They're going to have, these are the requirements, or a foxtrotter. But if you're outside the show ring, if you're looking for that smooth gait, then the same techniques apply. Every single breed of gaited horse can do the saddle rack. And so that is what I am generally teaching to all of the different horses.
Okay. All right. I feel like we have maybe exhausted. Well, no, I have one more question. So, because I don't want to just pigeonhole you on the gaited stuff here.
That's okay.
So here's my last gait specific question. Another big pattern that I have seen in the gaited world, and I don't understand, maybe there's an obvious answer, but the gaited world seems to be very akin to the English world. You'll see people that are like trail riding and they're more Western-ish saddle and all, but like when you get into the training aspect of it, like there seems to be a lot more, like you immediately talked about half halts and stuff in this conversation, which is, clearly into that side of things. So in your experience, do you agree that there's a pattern there? It may just be, again, in my limited experience, what I've seen, or is there a reason for there being that kinship?
So in the people I work with, my clients, you'll see far more Western tack, or endurance style tack than you will English. It's a small percentage that are going to show up with a dressage saddle or have a dressage background.
Okay.
So I think if you look at the show ring, there's more of that saddle seat, which is English akin as well. So like the Rocky Mountain horses show saddle seat style similar, adjacent maybe would be a good word. And so you'll see, unless it's a specific Western class, you're not going to see a lot of Western. And like the clothes are more toward saddle seat or English. I don't know where that's from, but again, most of my clients have Western saddles or endurance, rather than English. I'm not sure that quite answers your question.
No, I mean that's fair. Wasn't real clear. I had a question there. It's just sort of, again, an anomaly I'm trying to make sense of or categorize. So that does bring up sort of another anomaly for me to clear up here. And since I've got you as a captive audience, I mean, I might as well ask now, right? Yeah. So this seems, I would, in my mind, this is more of an East Coast thing. But there does seem this prevalence of taking breeds that I would not think of as gaited and doing gaited things with them. So like we just talked about the Arabs and toe weights, Morgan's kind of puts on that list to me. Like, I don't know much about Morgan's, but I have worked with some. None of them struck me as gaited, and yet I know that there's kind of a show. So is that a pet peeve of yours? Like, these are not gaited horses, people. Why do you keep trying to do this? Or am I wrong? And yes, there are Morgans that are truly gaited, and I just haven't seen them. Or
there
what?
are Morgans that are truly gaited. They're for 100%. There are certain bloodlines that are 100% gaited. As far as like seeing the toe weights in like the Morgans and the Arabians, I would have to say I have no idea. I'm not in that world either, so I would, claim ignorance to some of that as well.
Okay. And in fairness, I'm not like that. There is a specific shoe called an Arab toe weight shoe. So like that is predominantly an Arab thing to me. Yeah. And I've dealt with probably more Arabs than I have gaited horses. And like if there's a connection there, I haven't figured out what it is, but I also, I mean, I know that stuff exists, so that I'm definitely could just be me missing something. So let's just talk about training horses a little bit.
Yeah.
So you think that these gaited horses, they can be ridden in snaffles and they can do circles to the left and some of these other things too. You don't just have to fly down a trail and go in straight lines.
Yeah, I would prefer not to go flying down a trail in straight lines. I did a post recently, I don't remember if I mentioned it to you, but I talked about it at the Midwest Horse Fair, where I said these are 4 things that I absolutely have to have my horse doing before I go outside of the arena. They need to be soft, so vertical flexion, like lateral and vertical flexion. They need to be able to relax, so stretch long and low, stop and stand. They need forward. You would be surprised at the number of horses that do not move forward off of my leg. Like, they may be speed demons on the trail, but they don't know what leg means. And I just mean for forward. And then they must have speed control. So just like I'd expect a quarter horse to be able to maintain speed at the trot, I want my gaited horse, if I give them a loose rein, I want them to maintain speed and not speed up. And I will work on those things in the arena until they're, pretty consistent. Not be perfect, but there are so many horses that I get at a clinic or come for training, and I try to very nicely tell the owners, I'm like, your horse is wonderful. I know this horse keeps you safe on the trail. I would not personally ride this horse outside the arena yet, because the horse has no brakes. The horse won't stop and relax, or the horse won't gait on a loose rein. Like, it'll just kind of take off going faster. And so gaited horses can learn to do all of those things. They can do circles. They can canter if you want. They can stop. They can back up. They can do lateral work. And so many people who got into gaited horses, they don't want to do that training, or they've been told gaited horses can't do circles, or they've been told gaited horses only walk fast. They can't walk slowly. And they think that that's a sort of an indicator of the breed, or that it's a gaited horse, versus these are horses. Yes, there's an added element of the gait, but they deserve the same training, and they need the same training, and we riders need them to do the same things as quarter horses, because it's safer.
Yep. I have we have a campground up here north of us. Some good friends of mine own it, and a lot of gaited horses, come trail ride out of there and stuff. And every time I go up there, I feel like somebody's asking me to hold a horse to stand still while they get on him, and I'm like it does not need to be this way. Like, you can train this sucker to stand still while you get on it. It just doesn't. But there seems to be an acceptance of that stuff, and not just the gaited world. Like, I've seen plenty of barrel racers never get on a horse that's standing still. Dressage riders never get on a horse that's, so.
Oh yeah, standing still is another pet peeve for sure. Yeah. I'm like, your horse needs to stand at the mounting block.
That should be, for me, that's a minimum base. If a horse won't stand still, I'm not getting on, much less trail riding. Like he's, that's a problem. So, well, why don't you talk with us a little bit about your art? Because you had in your booth there at the Midwest Horse Fair, you had a bunch of your art displayed. It was pretty darn good stuff. So what have you got going on there, and what's kind of your history with art? And do you have more than one medium? And just have at it. Tell us all about it.
I, like many people, I picked up doing watercolor. Mostly what I work in is water mediums. I picked it up during COVID. Okay. I've always liked art type things growing up, but I never took art classes. I was homeschooled, and so I didn't have opportunity to do art classes or anything. I would draw a little bit, and then hadn't done much art, and then COVID happened, and my mom happened to have art, watercolor supplies, and I got back into it, and I really liked it, and I ended up learning from a couple of my friends, like, better techniques, and YouTube, right? We were all on YouTube learning how, whether it was making sourdough bread or cutting your own hair or any number of crazy things people picked up. And some people, that's how they got into horses. So I started doing it then, and my husband's a huge encourager. Like, my art 5 years ago was not good. 3 years ago, it wasn't very good. But he would always encourage me to just keep doing it. And after about 3 years, I moved from doing like landscape and floral and just playing to doing horses, and which is an easy enough transition to see an artist doing. And I really liked it. I liked very loose, somewhat colorful, not quite abstract, but not realism type of horse art, which is my personality. I love starting things, and I don't like projects that take a long time. So I will probably never do oil painting because it takes often longer. Not for everyone, but it's a longer process, and I don't like details. I like quick, flowy type of art, and mostly work with water mediums, so watercolor, graphite, water soluble graphite, or like ink. That's primarily what I do in art, and primarily what I do now is horse related art. And I usually sell just enough that it pays for more art supplies, which is great.
Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. Well, y'all really should check out her stuff. I don't know. Do you have any of that on your website, or is it just
Most of that is on social media, so I do a lot through Facebook.
okay? Well, I thought it was pretty darn good.
Thank you.
I'm actually quite surprised that you're telling me you just started that a few years ago during COVID. It does not look like you are a first grader at that stuff. So you're doing quite well. I can draw stick figures and hangman, and that's about as far as I get with that stuff. So
well, I want to give one little secret. One little secret to your listeners is that a lot of people, when they see my art, they're like, wow, I could never draw like that. But my secret is I actually trace the horses from photos first. So I do not freehand just draw something out of my head. I take photos of horses, and then you still have to be an artist. You have to be creative to draw what I draw. But to get the proportions right, I'm actually drawing off an actual photo, tracing it.
but that's pretty common, especially in the watercolor world, huh? Yeah,
it is. Or to use like carbon paper to transfer something. But I think a lot of people don't realize how common it is. Okay. And so anyway, I always want people to know, like, you don't have to be able to draw perfectly to be able to do art.
My grandmother took up watercolor later in life, and I'm very proud to have several of her works wonderful. Here in my office with me. And yeah, I always remember her drawing it out first and then kind of filling in and blending it and all. And so as long as you enjoy it, right? That's its own reward. So, okay, let's see if I can find another question for you. Is there a difference in training techniques for gaited ponies as opposed to non-gaited, or in the way you carry your body on a gaited horse, or anything like that?
I train gaited the same way as I would train, non-gaited. And as far as how you sit, I know that there are some people that are like, I would almost ride gaited horses if you could sit normally, and you can. This idea of riding, like leaning way back with your legs way forward, is not how I ride at all. In an ideal world, we would all ride in that more vertical seat, with our legs underneath us as much as possible. That should be normal, and that's how I ride gaited horses. There's some tweaks that you can do where, like, if your horse is a little trotty, you might lean backwards just a little bit, but only like as a temporary measure to help the horse, because then you'd come back to this vertical seat. And so it does not need to look like what we see you see in the speed racking world, or some of if you're imagining someone leaning way back with their legs way forward, that's not how I train.
Yep. Or I don't think necessarily leaning back and forward, but like my picture in my head, if you say gaited horse rider, it is of a rider that looks like their legs are allergic to touching the horse, so they have them off of the horse, not necessarily forward, but and like that is very foreign to me. My legs are the boundaries of the road we're on. That's so.
No, I will say a lot of the horses I work with, like if they come to a clinic, right? I've never seen this horse before. A lot of them may not know lateral work. We talk about this. They may not know leg cues, like to move sideways or laterally off of leg. And so when that happens, I may not like fully be able to utilize those cues to help move the horse's body. But that's where I would hope everyone is trying to get to, where they can do that with their horses. But a lot of people that trail ride, training, arena work is really not fun for them. And so they really struggle to take the time to train their horse to do some of these things. Not everyone, of course, but some people.
So what about, like, again, this is a characteristic I think of with a lot of gaited horse trainers. They don't necessarily ever leave the barn. Like, they ride back and forth up and down the aisleway.
Yes.
I don't know if that's standard or if this is a caricature that I have or what, but does your stuff look anything like that? Like,
no.
Okay.
It is a thing that exists, and you'll see it a lot in Kentucky and Tennessee, where they've got those wide barn aisleways and they go up and down them. And I think that's a way that they could have a way to ride indoors without having like a covered arena, which is of course more expensive. I don't know for sure. It does exist, even like there's a barn in Texas that has that. My work doesn't look like that. I ride a lot in an arena. It's in Texas, so it's covered, not enclosed on one half, and then the other half is open. But once I get a horse gaiting nicely and is, starting to move nicely, I go outside and I actually train up and down the driveway. It's a pretty long driveway. It's like a quarter mile long. And then, of course, you can take that training on the trail after that. Or I ride on the road. Although, when I lived in Illinois, it was great because it's a nice, quiet country road. But here in Texas, the drivers are not kind. And I've had some near misses and been threatened on the road. And so I don't do as much riding on the road. But I really like taking horses outside. Go outside. Learn to focus on the rider, even when it's windy or there's goats or there's cows or whatever is going on.
Yeah, let them see stuff. Yeah, I don't ride down the road anymore. I think Louisiana is the worst state for that. Like, I've been in Texas a bunch, and people ride a bunch. I've had people throw bottles. They're gonna honk horns. Like it's just not. When I was a kid, I rode a bunch, and I don't know. The world has changed. People don't understand horses, or they're more of a jerk or what. But yeah, I'm not heading down the road, and no desire for that.
Yeah, but if it was safe, imagine I would be riding down the road, getting him used to things, but also working on gait. You can, one of the things we haven't talked about is if you have a gaited horse, one of the best ways to know without having someone on the ground helping you if you're in gait or not, one is the feel, but imagine you couldn't feel it yet. You can listen for the sound, because a good gait sounds like pucka, 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 pucka. And you can hear that so well on the road and know that your horse is in gait so that you could stop and praise.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Use all your senses, right? That's
yes,
absolutely. We have another question. Have you had a chance to train gaited individuals within non-gaited breeds?
Yeah.
So I think that
no.
I was thinking he was talking about riders, not horses, but I think that's a horse question. So
it's a horse. Okay, so have I had a chance to? So I am eagerly waiting for the day someone wants me to work with them and their quarter horse that's gaited, or a gaited Arabian. I did get a chance to ride a gaited Arabian for a couple of days, but they really didn't want me to work on gaiting. It was something else that I was doing training wise. So I've not really had a chance to. I've seen plenty of videos. People have sent me videos of their horses gaiting that are like quarter horses or Arabians, but I've not really had a chance to work with any. And I'm looking forward to the day that happens.
So how about on the individual side? Like if you're taking someone that's used to quarter horses and now they've bought this gaited horse and they show up and they say, Ivy, what do I do? Is this a nightmare, a dream? Like what does that usually work out like for you?
I think I love working with people. I love helping people, and there's a lot to learn. Like, I had plenty of people come up to me at the Midwest Horse Fair that were very new to gaited. Lots of people that have been gaited for years, but when you're really new to this, there is so much to learn, and I do feel bad for them because there's so much misinformation out there as well. And so I really, really feel for them because they're going to get a gazillion different opinions, which is true in it could be quarter horses. You get a gazillion different ways to train. But in gaited horses, because it's that added level of difficulty of the gait, they come and they're like, or they say like, I wish I would have heard from you sooner, or like somebody would have taught me this, or I don't want to have to ride with my hands up all the time and leaning back, or they're like, I want to ride like a quarter horse. And the good news is I say, you can. Like, you can ride them like a horse. Just to understand that little bit of added element about the gait.
So is slacking the reins and a relaxed ride, but within gait, is within reach and not an impossible. You don't need the bit with reinforced long shanks and all of
You
that
don't,
stuff to
yeah,
make this happen.
You do not need contact to get gait or to have a horse hold gait. You do use contact at the beginning, just like with quarter horses, to train softness, to train them to, move with you and to respond. But to me, my goal when I ride a gaited horse is that I can give them a loose rein, a nice little draped rein, and they will be able to hold their speed and their gait. That to me, that's the goal. That's just, it's beautiful. Whenever I show people that, they're all like, yeah, that's what we want.
It's self-carriage, right? I mean, isn't that
Is.
supposed to be it doesn't seem like that should be impossible.
Yeah, it's self-carriage, it's balanced, it's they're trained, they're listening to the rider, which is what we want for all these horses, which is why you can take things you learn in training quarter horses, or you can take things you've learned in dressage and you can apply it to gaited horses and it works because they're still horses.
Okay. I have kind of a bit specific question here for you. So I've heard that gaited horses often have lower palates. Is that true? And why do gaited horses often not like plain O-ring snaffles? Does that have anything to do with the palate? I found more than once that was true. And again, I'm reading someone's question.
Yes.
These are not my words. She'd also like to hear how you raise the head after finding the correct footfall to get the horse off of the forehand a bit, and how you like to get sustained gait over long periods of time or self-carriage. So I guess you've already talked a little bit about that. That was a bunch.
So going to that last part, how do you get sustained periods of gait with self-carriage is you start by getting 3 steps of gait and stopping and praising. And when you do that consistently for a day, the next day you get 10 steps of gait and you stop and praise at 10 steps and you build that duration up. And often within a few weeks, you have your horses gaiting at least a quarter mile consistently. So that's to answer that part of the question. The second part is I also have heard that gaited horses have low palates, but I have no knowledge of how to check for that and if that's even true. So I have heard that as well. And then addressing the next part of that, which is you've found horses don't like a simple O-ring snaffle. Well, that tells us very little information about an O-ring snaffle. It tells us what the sides look like, but it doesn't tell us what the mouthpiece looks like. If the questioner is asking about a single jointed snaffle, I also find that many gaited horses do not do well in a single jointed snaffle. The problem I have is I don't know why. I just know many people, when they think of a snaffle, if they even know what a snaffle is they think of a single joint. And they'll tell me their horse doesn't like it. And I'm like, you can't just try a single joint. You might have to try a dog bone or a French link or more of a solid mouthpiece or miler or with a cricket or a roller, or there's so many different variations of that. And people often only try the single jointed snaffle. So you can answer if you have any follow-up on that.
Yeah, not to jump in on your question, but this is a little bit in my wheelhouse.
Yes, go for it.
So I would say that in my experience, just like in every other aspect, gaited horses are individuals. So some of them have low palates, some of them have high palates. So I can't say I've seen a real strong pattern there of they're usually this. It can vary. How you would check for that is very simple. So with the horse kind of facing you, pointing at your chest, you just take both thumbs and go right in the corners of the mouth and feel up. Okay. And so you should feel there's going to be ridges on the top of the mouth. Yes. That is part of their eating mechanism to help grass blades that they're eating not fall down. So it's like a little ladder chain as they're they're chewing, and so you'll feel those, and then you're pressing up. A lot of times it feels like there's almost a little cavity, like that is skin with nothing behind it, and then you hit the bone.
Okay.
And so you just have to, I can't
Start
really
feeling a lot
describe
of
to you
holes.
what a shallow palate feels like versus a deep palate, but put your thumbs in enough horses' mouths and you'll kind of find what's normal and then what is deeper than or shallower
Okay.
than normal. And then I mean, you'll know the answer to that in about 5 seconds. Feeling a
Okay.
horse. It's a pretty simple thing. I would say the single jointed snaffle, that is actually what I'm using to start all of them. It's what I start every horse with, but that bit is a lateral tool.
Mm-hmm.
So it really works best pulling on it one rein at a time.
Yeah.
When you go to pulling on two reins at a time, that's more of a vertical aspect, and it's just not the greatest tool for that. So that is where you would want to go to more maybe a double jointed snaffle or straighter type mouthpiece, or the Billy Allen style, what you're referring to as a miler.
Sure.
That's
Yeah,
a pet peeve of mine. The man that designed that's named Billy Allen, and then
okay,
other
so Billy
companies.
Allen would be what we think of is the Myler brand, but that would be Billy Allen style.
It's his design. Yeah, they just
His
took the
design.
same
Okay.
design and then gave it their name, the Comfort Mouth and all. But yeah, they did not invent that.
Great. I love knowing the correct terms, so you can
Yeah.
correct me anytime about bit
No,
stuff because I love correct terms.
that's just one of my pet peeves when you
Yeah.
take somebody else's design and then you give it
Yes.
your name and then they got more popular with it. So
Yeah,
um,
Billy Allen. So for
yeah,
everybody, it's a Billy Allen style. Got it.
named after a person who
Yep.
whose idea it
Yes.
was. So that would be what I would say. When you get to the stage of training where you are working more in contact and pulling on two reins at the same time, a single jointed snaffle is simply not the best tool for that. That is where you could go to the double jointed snaffles and that kind of thing. I will also say that, like what you're talking about, and we get a few steps of gait and then we release and we stop. That is incredibly important when you get to contact. If you think that you can ride in contact for 20 minutes and not fry the horse's tongue, you are wrong. They cannot handle that. That is always going to be a problem. And so when you get to the vertical stage of things, there have to be breaks in there for their mouth or you will fry them.
Yes.
So
I'm so glad you said that. Because I know people, they don't want to ride like this, but their horses at the place where if they go down a trail ride, they know they're going to be pulling on the horse for most of the ride because the horse won't walk.
Yeah.
And some people are fine with that. And I'm not. I would never take that horse on a trail ride till we could fix that somewhere else first. But that's really good to hear you say, like, there's even a biomechanical reason why you should not do it.
Yes. So let me ask you this, since we kind of broached that subject. So another part of that picture is with the gaited horse with their head pretty high and their chin out and away. So kind of nose flat. Yeah. Is there, like, I know a lot about the horse's eye and the way that it works. And I use that in my teachings with bits. So if a horse is in that position, their eye is focusing a far distance. Yeah, they're looking down the road. They're not looking at what's right in front of you. So other than that, is there a biomechanical reason why that head position may not be preferred by you? You feel free to differentiate that, but that kind of is the picture we have when we think of this thing. So is there a reason why the head needs to be up and chin needs to be out like that?
So up and out is an interesting definition. So if I were to show you videos of me showing you gaited horses that are more where I would say finished and they're gaiting nicely on a loose rein, you're going to see their head and neck are level to a little bit higher than level. And yes, their nose is out, but it would not be where I would consider up, for example. It would be closer to level. Unless they were going faster. As they go faster, it does seem that their head comes up more just for their balance. But the nose out, and again, it's not way out, it's a little bit out. And usually when you're gaiting, it does need to be somewhat level ground. If you're going over a terrain that they need to put their head down and look, you're probably, you want them to put their head down and look, and you're probably walking. But if you're on flat level terrain, it doesn't really matter if they're not looking, right down at their feet. Because yes, when their nose is out, they're looking forward. I'm fine with that. Like, I think it's fine if they're on a loose rein, if their head's not way up. We're not talking about head way up in the air, but like level, but the nose gently out. To me, that is normal and acceptable for what I would want while the horse is gaiting. And I don't know if there's a correlation to them like looking ahead. In the show ring, they're trying to get the nose to the vertical, but that is an artificially man-made standard. I'm not saying that it's not correct or bad, but it is not the horse did not create that standard for themselves, that the nose in is preferred. Because I think you see a lot of gaited horses, if they're gaiting loose in the pasture, their nose is out. And so I think that is more of the natural state for them to move.
Yep, I completely agree. And with everything that you just said, the vertical is kind of an arbitrary man-made sort of thing, and I get the desire for roundness and that kind of stuff, but
yes.
But I also understand the horse's eye, and I think if I'm sending you in this direction, you kind of have a right to look
Yeah.
and not trip on stuff, and and so for them to do that, their nose needs to be up and out. So here's another one of those like things that I really attribute to gaited horses. Like if you picture trail riding or something, and there's a tree down across the trail, like those suckers will just take that in stride. They don't slow down. They don't check up. Like they just right across it like it wasn't even there. And that's not an experience you get with a quarter horse. Like you're going to jump that thing or you're going to stop and they're going to plod 1 foot. And then, and the gaited horses, it's like the tree might as well have not been there unless it's so tall that it would hit their belly or something. But
I think that depends.
They just handle that stuff great.
A lot of them do. A lot of them, when you just have that expectation of we're trail riding and we're just going to hop over this, a lot of them will behave that way. But I think you can also find exceptions to that rule, like anything. I have jumped logs with gaited horses before on the trail. More often, we go slowly just for safety, but there's nothing wrong with hopping over it, or slowing them down to walk over. But they do seem to be fairly nimble.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would completely agree. And I mean, that's what they're bred for. That you would think they would excel on that sort of a thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and my quarter horse is terrible at jumping. He is awful at it.
Well, there were a couple of other questions in there about gaited horse bits, and I know we've touched on that a little bit, but do you want to put a cap on that or anything like our long shanked reinforced so they don't bend bits necessary or good for this?
Not necessary, not at all. I don't use anything like that. Most of the training most of the training that I do is with a snaffle, different mouthpieces, but a snaffle, or bitless. You can absolutely get a gaited horse to gait without a bit, in case that was a question anybody had. And then often, sometimes smaller shanked bits will be used. I do not at all use any kind of long shanked bits, and very rarely do clients come anymore with the really long shanks like you're talking about that are reinforced so they don't bend. My clients are not looking for that. They're trying to move away from that style of riding often, if they were in it at all. And if we do use a shank, often it's for the benefit of the rider, in that, not that you always need to stay in a snaffle, because I'm not against spade bits, I'm not against horses that are well trained. A lot of riders that I work with that are in some kind of shanked bit is because they don't feel like they have enough control to stop with a bit that does not have shanks. And if it was me, or when they bring a horse to me for training, I would be doing a lot of the training in a snaffle before I move to a shanked bit, so that I don't have to rely on that shank purely for pain, rather more as a communication device. But it is important that my riders are safe. And so if they feel like they need a little bit of extra breaks, I always encourage more training but I want them to be able to be safe on the trail.
So how many of those riders would you say have ever worked with their horse on stopping and down regulating, and where they
very few of them those riders.
So if
have
all of a
done
sudden
well.
stopping becomes when stopping becomes a good thing, then they're not hard to stop anymore. That's the kind of stuff that should be done by the third ride. Like I do not get how we have 8-year-olds that don't know how to do that yet. But
no. Stopping is wonderful. I do it. If you like look at my videos of my clinics and you scrub through the footage, most of it is me standing. Because we do a little bit of training and then we stop and stand. And we do a little bit of training and then we stop and stand. And horses love it. They're energy conservers, and we want them to be regulated and not have to go anywhere. So, and yes, then usually stopping is not a difficult thing. And I wish more people would do some of those things from the training early on.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, sure.
And that's really probably most of the gaited horses that I have gotten in. That is because they wanted a horse that acted like a horse, and then once he acts like a horse, then they'll send him to go get gaited.
and that's what I actually tell people. I actually tell people, if you have a gaited horse you want started under saddle, send it to a good quarter horse trainer that will teach them the lateral work, the softness, the flexion, stopping, everything you're talking about. And then if you need help with the gait, then send it for 30 to 60 days with a gaited horse trainer. And you'll have a good product at the end of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree. Absolutely. Well, Ivy, that is kind of what I had written down here for you. And I have taken a good chunk of your time. Is there anything that I have not asked you that you would like to talk about, or you were kind of here in anticipation of, and I got to get this off my chest, or anything like that?
Well, one of the things you didn't ask me about, I mentioned, but a lot of people say, can you canter a gaited horse?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. Now, do you have to if you only want to gait? No, you don't have to if you don't want to. And I will tell you, some gaited horses have a lovely canter. It's easy for them. And some horses have a lot of difficulty cantering. And if you have one that's difficult cantering and you don't want to do the work, that's fine. If you want to do the work, my really quick tip is work on walk to canter transitions over like a ground pull or a small jump. But if you have one that does it easily, there's nothing wrong with cantering. My one rule, which you don't have to follow because it's my rule, is I always ask for a canter from the walk. Because what you don't want is you don't want your horse thinking that instead of gaiting faster, he can just break to the canter. That to me would be incorrect. So you want good distinction between the different movements. So this is gaiting, and you don't want your horse to try to canter until you've cued it. And the easiest way for gaited horses is to try to ask from the walk. And this also helps them be more balanced, because many gaited horses are pacing. And if you ask for them to go from a pace to a canter, it's going to be rough. It's going to not be good. And so it's much better to ask for walk to canter.
I would also say this has always seemed kind of counterintuitive to me, but most of the gaited horses that I have started naturally canter very slowly. They have a very comfortable night. Like they're not you feel like they're going to just run away with you once they realize they're not that at all. They tend to be very slow and easygoing and very comfortable to ride. And I have always wondered, like, why the hell don't they do more of this? Because these things they're great at the canter for the most part,
I think so many of these rules that people tell, like, don't canter your gaited horse, it comes from the show ring. Because to break to a canter would be you'd get deducted points, right? Because you wouldn't hold their gait. And so if your whole goal is just showing in the show ring, of course you would never canter it if it wasn't required, right? But if you're a trail rider or you're a pleasure rider, that doesn't matter. And so absolutely canter your gaited horse if they have a nice canter. There's nothing wrong with that. It is not harmful.
Yeah. Well, I love that. Well, Ivy, I have very much enjoyed our chat. I have learned a lot on this one, and I really appreciate your time. I am actually, I don't, I know there's no way I could do it this year, but if I can figure out a way to bring my quasi-gated quarter horse to one of your clinics, I'm going to show up and let you give me some instruction, and we'll see what Barney can really do.
I think that would be really cool to try. Just try it. Just see what
Or I
happens.
may even video him and just send you a little video, and
Yes,
you can
please
go
do that.
yay or nay. Yeah. So
Yeah, please send me a video. I would love to see him.
I don't know that I've videoed him a bunch, but I don't know that I've ever really slowed it down and looked at that aspect of it, really paying attention to it. So I'm kind of curious now.
Yeah. Often you'll see it most if you walk, trot, walk transitions, or walk canter sort of in there. That's where you might start to see a little bit of that lateral movement. So if you're going to video it, try to video some of those transitions.
Okay. Cool.
Or anytime that you think he feels different. But for anybody listening, if they're not sure, those are where I would focus on videoing.
Okay. Well, and as always, we will have links in the show notes to Ivy's website and social media stuff and all of that, so y'all can get in touch with her. And she's pretty popular and moving down the road a whole bunch, so I'm sure you'll be able to catch her at an expo or something like that coming up and check out some of her watercolors and all of that as well. So, well, Ivy, thank you very much for joining me today. I appreciate it, and I have enjoyed our chat quite a bit.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was great. It was wonderful questions.
We'll see you next week for another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I've been your host, Daniel Dolphin.